All right, sorry about that. If the music was a little loud. Usually, I have the music turned off because I get a copyright, not content ID when I have the particular music on. So I haven't got a chance to actually re-render that particular video and put some audio to it. So I appreciate if you turn the volume down before we get started, so it's not too loud. Let me know if my audio is okay. So let me kind of give you at least a brief overview of what I'm trying to do tonight. I'm first trying to find a moderator that can actually talk or at least moderate this particular discussion. This is not a debate. I am not here for a debate tonight. If somebody wants to formally debate me, I'm more than willing to do so, but there has to be certain guidelines and parameters for that. And there certainly has to be some kind of equal footing. I bring a lot to the table. When I do my debates, I spend about 2 weeks to prepare for them. And so it is definitely not a debate. So let me make that very clear. However, I do have somebody who on Facebook basically says they can refute my arguments, and that's fine. I look for people that want to be able to refute my arguments. However, I don't think that's going to be the case because he's been telling me now that this is not the argument that he wants to refute. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to bring him on in a few minutes. I did tell him I was going to go live for about 5 minutes before I do, hopefully to bring in a moderator. So if anybody's out there that has moderation abilities, please let me know. I have said that I believe that a lot of the new atheist TMs, which is a term that I have not come up with, that is a term that has been around for a very long time, I believe have very similar attributes. And one of the attributes is they never seem to bring actual evidence, logic, or reason to the table when you have any kind of discussion on objective subjects. What I mean by objective subjects is means that there is an objective fact of the matter to be had. When you're dealing with mathematics, when you're dealing with logic, when you're dealing with certain things that has some fact of the matter, there has been no ability, it seems to me, from a lot of people on that side of the fence that have come to me and said, hey, Steve, here's actual evidence that you are incorrect by a logical proof, right? So that's what I'm hoping that he'll bring to the table tonight. So anyways, let me give you, like I said, a brief backstory. I gave about 10 reasons on Facebook why I think the usage of the word atheism in the negative case, which is basically where the negator is in front of the proposition or the preposition of the negator is in front of the predication and not the proposition, such as I do not believe P, it is less informative, it is less useful, it's less axiologically valuable than in the positive case. I've had that argument for many, many years. I have some formalized reasons for that. And so that's kind of the discussion I like to talk to about with New Atheist. So I came up with 10 things that I've enumerated. I'll put them on my webpage eventually, and then I'll give links out for it if people want to use them. But those 10 things I find to be what are attributes of people, what I call New Atheist TMs. They basically all seem to have very similar properties of arguing like creationists or flat earthers, where they just don't bring the evidence to the table. So that's basically what we'll be talking about tonight. I see Jeff in the live chat there. Jeff, if you like to be able to come in and moderate for this, I would be really appreciative. I know that Mark is in the live chat, and I will be bringing him in a second, but I don't want this to get vitriolic. I don't want this to be in any way invective or using pejoratives. I'm going to try to be as factual as I can and fact of the matter, but I do need somebody to help maybe regulate and put the discussion back on track if it goes astray. So if you like to do that, Jeff, I'm all for that. Please let me know, and I'll give you a link directly via Twitter. Jeff's amazing for that. So I'm going to be giving him the link right now. I did tell him I was going to go live about 5 minutes prior, which I have already done, and I always keep my word. So I'll be giving, hang on. Sorry, I'll be giving him the link on Facebook right now, and Mark, you can join. That is the link to join I just gave you. I'll be giving it to Jeff just in case, because if you can join. And we'll get this going. So Jeff, if you can join and you want to moderate, I'm giving you the link just in case. Oh, he's about ready to go work. So, okay, never mind then. So Oflama says, when are you going to take on Ozian? Ozian actually, believe it or not, my moderator for my Discord, believe it or not. We agree on most things. I don't know what we would possibly disagree on or have a discussion about. So, but welcome everyone. Welcome April, Chemo Maki. I see you out there. By the way, I just got off work not too long ago. I haven't even got myself situated very much. I'm very hungry, very tired. All right, so here comes Mark. 1 second. All right, Mark. 1 second here. Let me put this on the screen here. So. There we go. Anyways, okay. So, Mark, in kind of a nutshell, I have said that I believe that new atheist TMs are kind of cowards because they don't seem to ever want to face me when it comes to my particular. Okay, so hang on. There we go. So now you can hear me. Mark, you there? Okay. Wow, that's loud. You got some major gain. All right. So correct me if I'm wrong, but what I've said was I believe that new atheist TMs are a subset of atheists that I believe are cowards to face me when it comes to my arguments. I have very well thought out, articulated proofs. I mean, these are logical proofs. These are not just subjective evaluations. They lead to subjective evaluations when you look at the conclusion. But if you accept the premises, then the conclusion must necessarily follow from the premises because it's a valid argument. Would you agree, though, that my arguments are at least valid? Will you start with that premise?
So I think you're in a bit of a fantasy world there. You mentioned flat earthers before. I think you're in a bit of a fantasy world about new atheists. So I'm not a new atheist, Steve.
Okay, so your audio was off for just a few seconds, but they got the most of it. So new atheism was in the Vanity. It referred to Daniel.
Article. It was a magazine article, Steve. Yes, it's a magazine article.
Yes,
about 4 people.
It referred to.
I'm not one of those 4 people.
Yes, it referred to Daniel Dennett, Christopher Hitchens, and Richard Dawkins. And so new atheism TM, though, is a very select group of people that argue like flat earthers. That's what it actually kind of means. Can you hear me?
I'm not one of them.
Okay, well let's find that out. So again, I didn't place you as a new atheist TM. I have said, though, if people want to try to discuss my arguments, I'm happy to do so. So which argument do you think? And I have 3 main ones, really. I have what's called my WASP argument, which is my weak atheist special pleading argument. I have my ASC argument, which is my atheist semantic collapse argument. And then I have basically the 10 points I made why the axiological value of atheism in the positive case is better than the negative. Which do you think is wrong?
Well, I mean, I think you like to use these big words like the logical notation because you think it impresses people. But the thing about axiological arguments is that they're subjective. I mean, I don't really care what your axiological argument, what your axiological value, what your assessment of that is. I'm not interested in that.
Well, sure, that is valuable. Absolutely, that is subjective. However, the arguments that go into why it should be the case that you should accept something as being better can be a logical argument. I mean, the logic that I have is...
If you've got logical arguments, go for it. But as far as your axiological argument, I mean, the title of this is Big Brain Mark Peacock Refutes My Atheist Axiological Argument. I don't need to refute an axiological argument. Okay. There's nothing to refute. It's subjective.
Are you able to refute my logical arguments?
You know, I've already won. Like, there's nothing to refute.
That's arguing like a flat earther. Flat earthers do that. I've already won. So you say that my logic. You say that my logic, which I'll show in a second. Okay. I write my formal logic because I started off just explaining to people these concepts. People in the new atheist community did not or the TM did not understand. Let me finish, please.
It's like speaking in Klingon. You think it's really impressive, and you're using this jargon that you think no one else can understand, and therefore you're winning these arguments. I mean, by the way, I'm the person you called out 3 times for being a coward. You know what I am, Steve?
You're somebody who interrupts.
I'm a part-time maintenance guy from the local hotel here.
Yeah, you're somebody who interrupts. I mean, Mark.
Axiological arguments. Why are you calling someone like me a coward online? Mark. Because I don't dare face you. And how foolish of me to think that I could refute your axiological
argument. And this is why I wanted a moderator.
When axiological arguments don't need refuting. It's your opinion.
All right. Again, I'm sorry that middle of my sentence interrupted the beginning of yours, as they say, Mark. I'm sorry that the middle of my sentence interrupted yours as you interrupted me as I was in the middle of stating something.
I did warn you to have a box of tissues handy, Steve.
So again, I understand you like to interrupt people, but if I can formulate a coherent sentence before you start talking, that would be just swell. Okay?
If you could formulate a coherent sentence, that would be a really great start,
Awesome.
Steve.
So you had said that you are against a logical argument. You said that you think that the reason why I use these big terms is to impress, rather than the fact that I have said that I have started off very basic with people. What I do is I have 3 levels of discourse. I have the very simplistic discourse that anybody should be able to understand. And then as it gets a little bit more, well, could you kind of explain to me this a little bit better way? I'll get to more medium, right? And then if they really want a more formal explanation, I can get down to the nitty gritty, get the citations. You know I have academic citations on my blog. You know that I've read many scores of papers on this particular topic. I can get to the details. The paper that I wrote was to go to those people that have said my arguments are wrong logically and show that I have a formal logical proof that they are correct, that PhDs that are experts in this topics have read my paper and agreed it is correct. That is what I'm trying to say. You don't have to necessarily defeat my paper, but can you at least recognize that the paper that I wrote, which is, and I'm going to bring it up to the people in the audience, called How the Presumption of Atheism by Way of Semantic Square of Opposition Leads to Semantic Collapse, which is actually in the top 3% of academic EDU right now. You don't like the notation, I get that. But can you at least agree that if you read this paper, which again, I'm not going to go through the whole paper, it is well articulated. Somebody actually told me today it was masterful. It is based on Boolean logic. And let me finish, and then I'll let you have a chance to speak. It is based on Boolean logic. It is based on basic predication logic.
Hang on a sec. The thing about your rule about how you can't be interrupted is you will just drone on continuously without taking a breath. I've seen lots of your debates, and you will just drone endlessly onwards and then complain anytime you're interrupted. The thing is, if you want to have a discussion, that involves both of us talking.
As far as my paper is my paper logically valid?
Your paper is pointless.
That's not my question.
It addresses a definition of atheism that doesn't apply to my position.
Mark, if you want to have a conversation, you have to be able to answer questions.
Axiological argument, which is the third of the sets of arguments that you mentioned, is subjective, and so it's irrelevant to me. It's your opinion. It's your subjective view, which I don't value. So there's nothing there for me to refute. The other 2 arguments that you have against atheism,
this is why I wanted a moderator.
Address a definition of atheism that I don't use.
Once again,
so what is there for me to refute?
You have to be able to answer questions, Mark. This is what I'm saying. You say you're not a new atheist TM, but you're exhibiting every single property that I have given for what new atheist TMs exhibit. They do not allow for any kind of conversation. They interrupt. They don't provide any evidence of their claims. And they don't answer direct questions. Now, I will have asked you this new question numerous times.
You haven't asked me a direct question yet.
I literally did. I said, is my paper logically valid? I'm showing it to the audience. That's not my question.
I think it's valid, yes.
Okay,
I'm not sure
it's valid. Okay.
I think it's valid.
Okay, well, that's a start because a good logical argument is both valid and sound. Can you explain to my audience the difference?
Well, I can explain it just needs to be sound.
Right. Can you explain to my audience the difference? And by the way, this is what we're talking about right here in the audience.
I'm not doing tests, Steve. Ask me your questions.
I did ask you a question. Can you explain to my audience the difference between valid and sound?
Well, it's valid if it logically follows, but it's sound if the premises are actually true.
Correct. Okay. So, do you agree that it logically follows?
What is the cubic capacity of a 2020 Suzuki Katana?
What does that have to do with our topic?
Fucking nothing.
I can ask you the thickness of the element coding around reserve clocks. I feel better. This is my paper. This is something that in my argument. You say my arguments are wrong, but you won't discuss.
Why am I a coward? So tell me why I'm a coward.
You're a coward because I wrote this paper and I wrote some other formal arguments that new atheist TMs will not try to argue against. You're not arguing against my paper.
I will argue against it. I'm not a new atheist. That's just a magazine article. And I'm not one of the subjects of that magazine article in your fantasy world.
Okay, so
but I will ask you questions about my position, happily.
We'll get to there, but I want to make sure that because you have kind of said that my arguments are wrong.
What?
You have said on Facebook that my argument is wrong.
It is.
Okay, so what is wrong with my paper? What's wrong with it?
It doesn't address my position.
What the hell does my paper have to do with your position? It's irrelevant.
It was directed at me.
I did not write my paper for you, Mark. I don't know what kind of egotist you are, but
Shut up for a second. It's
You're interrupting me.
People who use the definition of atheism that I use.
Okay, Mark, I don't think you read my paper because I actually use your definition in my paper.
I've got a life.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Let me hear. Okay, I want to make sure the audience hears this. You didn't read my paper.
No.
Then how do you know it's logically valid?
Because you can't refute a word usage. You can't debunk a word usage, Steve.
How did you know
that I can't define atheism the way that I define it, and you had debunked that. You can't debunk a word usage.
I don't think you understand my arguments, Mark.
It's not a prescriptive language, Steve.
No, Mark, I don't see the problem we're having is you have no idea what my arguments really are. You're arguing what's called a straw man. Do you know what a straw man fallacy is? A straw man.
Go through it. Tell me, what's your argument? Go for it.
A straw man fallacy is when you build an effigy of an argument because it's easier to refute.
Straw man is.
I don't think that you do because you're doing it.
What is your argument, Steve?
You're here to tell me what my argument is and then refute it because you say you think yes, you are. You said you understood my argument. Mark, you told me you understood my argument.
Oh my God.
So you lied to me when you said you understood my argument. You said my argument was logically valid, yet you've never read it. How is that possible?
I've read criticisms of it.
No, you haven't.
Yeah, I have.
From whom?
What does it matter?
Because there's only one paper out there that is the criticism on it, that's on research.net, and myself and Lander Kurt Noll, who is a mathematician, an expert in mathematics and logic, went over that refutation and pointed out all the numerous issues with it.
The published criticism.
So what? So okay, give me.
I've talked to you before. Actually, I've talked to you a few times about your argument, and we always get this point where you start saying things like, well, yes, but you know, evolution has different meanings. And what if I started saying about blah, 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 and you go on about different meanings of evolution? And then the other person, myself, for example, would say, yes, but if I'm talking about evolution in terms of biology, this is its definition. And I'll give a specific definition in context. At which point you just start whining about, oh, you're referring to a dictionary, or you go off on some sort of tangent.
Again, I don't think you understand my argument. So what you're talking about is I argue.
Or you get to this point where you'll say, oh, but under that definition, you think rocks are atheists.
All right.
And to which the response is obviously, rocks don't have beliefs about things. I mean, an atheist is a person who does not believe that there's a God or who lacks belief in a God. Rocks aren't people.
Mark.
But at that point, you'll go, oh, that's stupid.
No, Mark, I'm telling you right here now, Mark, let me interject. Mark, let me interject.
Obvious responses to those rebuttals.
Let me interject because you have no idea what my arguments actually are. You have never read any of them. You do not know what you're talking about. So let me explain the whole word usage when it comes to the term evolution. If you're in the domain of discourse of biology, typically when you read the academic literature, the term evolution is something along the lines of change of allelic frequency or heritable traits in a given populations of species from one generation to the next generation. That's how you interpret the word if you use a paper. Most people in biology recognize this, okay? You know I have biological
over time, or changes in heritable characteristics in a population.
Yes, I have biology videos.
You can also talk about the evolution of the car.
So
the evolution of the automobile, the evolution of the iPhone, the evolution of so evolution does have different meanings.
Why are you interrupting me?
Specific meanings in specific contexts.
Hey, one sec. Undoomed, this is not a debate, but we need a moderator. If you would like to come in Undoomed and moderate this with your sultry voice, that would be just amazing because I don't like being talked over, and I think that I don't like being talked over, and he keeps interrupting in the middle of my sentence. So Undoomed, if you're interested in moderating, let me know. If not, just sit back and chill.
Get on with your argument.
All right, so
get on with it.
All right, so well, first of all, again, I asked you what my argument is, and you didn't seem to know. I asked you about my paper. You said it was logically valid, but you
and get on with your argument. Stop complaining and get on with your argument. If you've got one, do it.
You literally just interrupted me again.
Well, because you were whining. Get on with your argument.
Which one?
I don't care.
So you don't even know what you're here for.
Start.
There's nothing you can refute.
Okay, I'll shut up. And you go with your argument. Not your whinging, not what does this mean, not asking me to 20 questions. Give me your argument.
Okay, so you want me to pick a random argument of mine and you could just sit there and refute it? Is that it? All right. So let's talk about the whole rocks thing, right? That rocks about atheist. Your usage by necessity, by local necessity. Do you understand the difference between local and global necessities?
Give me your argument.
Well, I want to make sure you understand what I'm talking about. Okay, so you don't understand. All right.
Instead of giving your argument, give your argument.
All right, here's my argument. By local necessity, if you use atheism in the weak case because of set theory, where you have a universal set that has two complementary sets, A prime and A. A prime is equal to the universal set divided by A. A is going to be the complementary set that anything not in A is an A prime. You have a logical dichotomy, which is A or not A, is going to be equal to true all the time. That's called the law of negation. Under that dichotomy, anything that's not in set A must be in set A prime. That is a logical necessity in the universal set. That means that anything that's not a theist is a not a theist. So you're theist and not theist. So everything in the universe falls in one of those two sets. Either you're a theist or you're not a theist. If you semantically change the term not theist, and we'll just say arguendo, we're going to call that not theist or non-theism. I'm in the middle of my argument. You can have a rebuttal. If you semantically change not theist, we're going to call it non-theism because it's easier. So you have theism or not theism. If you change that to atheism, now you have a dichotomy between theism and atheism. That anything that's not in the set of theist is in the set of atheism. That would include rocks by logical necessity. Now explain to my audience how logically that doesn't follow. And you cannot just wave it away by saying, well, they don't have thoughts, they don't have psychological states. This is a set theory argument based upon a complementary dichotomy of a universal set. So explain to my audience how you resolve that issue.
Okay, sure. This is easy. The way that you explain that is we're talking about the set of all people, not the set of all things.
No. You already have a straw man.
Let me finish. I've got to be able to answer.
But you already have a straw man.
No, I've got to be able to answer. You asked me to answer. You've said your thing.
So you're going to be a straw man. Go ahead. Take your time.
Okay. So theism, or theists are people who believe in a creator God or a theistic God. Atheists are people, emphasis on that word, people who don't have that belief in a theistic God. So people who are not convinced that there is a God, but it is the set of all people, not the set of all things. And rocks are not in the set of all people. Okay? Finished.
All right. So that was what's called a straw man. He didn't address, you notice he didn't even address the logic. The logic has nothing to do with people. Here's the actual logic that's involved. And I know you can't see it and I apologize, but since you didn't bother to read any of my stuff, which I did tell him I was going to send him. I offered.
Oh God. I get $5. You're going to do an equation. Oh, this is fantastic.
Okay. So I offered to send him my arguments and he said he already read them. You did say you read them. Now you said that you didn't read them. So that was a lie. But here's the actual logic. A or not A is.
What was the lie?
That you said you read my stuff. You told me on Facebook. Yeah, you did.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you did. You said I know your. Well, you said I'm sorry. You said you know my arguments.
I've read your comments before, and I've listened to a lot of videos of yours, but I haven't read your paper. I said I haven't read your paper because I have a life.
Okay.
And
so here's the actual argument. See, you did what's called a straw man fallacy. You didn't have an counter argument.
How is it a straw man?
Because you didn't.
So what's wrong with it? So I said that theism and atheism discuss the positions of people. It's not the set of all things. It's the set of people.
Okay. You didn't.
Rocks are external to the set of people.
Can you guys see this on the outside? I know it's very small and I do apologize. I might be able to make it a little larger, but it's really, there we go. No, does that make it, no. That's better. So if you guys can see on the outside, since you're not interested in the inside, if you look at the actual way a complementary set works, this formula right here is very simple. It just says A prime is equal to X.
You're going to use a formula. This is fantastic. You're going to use a formula. You can't address with words. Use words, Steve. Use words to explain how that's a straw man. How are rocks included in the set of people? I mean, what definition of atheism are you using here? What definition of atheism do you think I'm using?
It really doesn't matter because you're not even understanding the argument. You're not even at a level to even understand the basics of what I'm talking about.
But you just don't understand.
Okay, so
you don't understand. Oh, nobody understands. It's because it's stupid, Steve.
I would like my audience, by the way, I'd like my audience to recognize that when he said he wasn't a member of New Atheism TM, this is the actual type of argumentation that a New Atheist TM would give. I rest my case on that, by the way. So at least I demonstrated to you guys exactly what I have to deal with on Facebook when you have somebody who's so incompetent that doesn't even understand the argument. But anyways, let's continue. And by the way, that wasn't trying to be a pejorative. I do think incompetency is not necessarily a negative thing. You learn from incompetency. We all are incompetent in certain things. There's certain things I'm completely incompetent in.
Explain why it's a straw man.
So
not with a formula. Use your words to explain why it's a straw man.
In a universal set of all things that exist.
Not a universal set.
Oh my God, Jesus fucking Christ,
it's not
dude.
a universal set. Theism and atheism reflect people's traditions.
Mark, do you know what a universal set is in set theory?
Yes.
No, you don't. No, I can tell you right now, you don't.
No. Yeah. Do you know what the engine capacity?
We're not talking about engine capacities. We're talking about my arguments.
You're asking these pointless questions.
But these are my arguments.
It's not a universal set, Steve.
You asked me about my arguments, and then you straw man them, and then you start going off on something that's completely irrelevant.
It's not a straw man because it's not a universal set. Theism and atheism reflect people's perspectives.
So can I explain to my audience so they understand? Okay, so to the audience, because my audience are not full of stupid people. My audience are actually quite bright in these subjects. The universal set is all things that are in reality. Anything that's not in an impossible set. So as my audience knows this, there are such things called possible worlds. Possible worlds are possible situations where you have the proposition being true. So if something is the case that it might be different in some other possible world, we would say that it's logically possible. Okay? In this particular universe that we have, what we would call reality, everything, every truth, or in this case, an ontological state, anything that exists will be in the set of the universe. So my cup, my apartment, my car, whatever it is, that's going to be in the set of things that exist in the universe. Okay? In the universal set, you have the group A and you have the A prime, which is the complementary set. So anything that's not in set A, and by the way, if you look at this formula, which you seem to not like, it says that X is an element of U. It must be X is an element of A or X is an element of A prime. It cannot be any other way. That's called a strict logical dichotomy based upon the principle of bivalence for set theory. It means that if you're in one, you cannot be in the other. They're called mutually exclusive and jointly exhaustive. So do you agree, because I don't think you understand this, but do you agree that if you have theist or not theist, that must be true by the law of negation? So anything that's not a theist would be in the set of not theist. Do you agree with that?
No.
How do you, okay, so if you don't agree with that, I'd like to explain to my audience, who's well familiar with logic, what set you would be in if you're not in the set of one or the other on a true dichotomy.
Well, first of all, I'd clarify that in discussing atheism and theism, referring to people,
That doesn't even address remotely my argument. Are people not in the universe? Are people not something that exists in the universe? I don't know what the hell that sounds. That's on your end. What is that noise?
That's right, my phone rang.
Oh, okay.
My phone rang.
All right. I don't, again, this is what I'm saying. You don't understand my arguments well enough to articulate a coherent rebuttal to them, because if you do not understand that the universal set is the thing of all things, and in that universal set, you have
I know what a universal set is, you dumbass.
No, you don't.
I'm saying that atheism and theism don't refer to a universal set. I'm not offering a true dichotomy. I never stated a true dichotomy. I never defined atheism as a dichotomy.
I'm not even talking.
You are the one having the straw man, creating the straw man here, Steve, not me.
Okay. Do you agree that in a logical dichotomy for the law of negation, you have either true or not true? Something is either true or it's not true.
Something is either true or it's not true, yes.
That's classical logic. That's intentional logic. So
yes, I agree with that.
If I have A or not A, is that a truism?
Yes.
Okay. If I instantiate A with something like blue, I have blue or not blue.
Yes.
So everything in the universe, and by the way, I will have a hangout one day on negators because negation is actually pretty interesting subject. But simply speaking, you have not blue or blue or not blue. Everything in the universe is either blue or not blue.
Mm-hmm.
So if I instantiate A with the word theist, everything is either a theist or not a theist.
Which I'm not doing.
Irrelevant. But that's a logical dichotomy.
Relevant, but I thought I was creating a straw man, but it's not relevant that I'm not proposing that I'm not offering it as a dichotomy. So that's not. But
it relevant. Is a dichotomy. You're saying that blue and not blue is a dichotomy, but theist and not theist is not a dichotomy. Is that what you're saying?
It's a dichotomy amongst people.
No, it's a strict dichotomy. Period. Either either X is an element of A.
No, hang on. Yes, either you are a this or you are a that.
No.
A rock yous. A rock's things that we address as a you.
All things that exist. My cup.
They're not, are they?
My cup is either a theist or my cup is not a theist.
What?
My cup. My cup. I'm actually drinking water.
Your cup is neither.
My cup's not a theist? Okay, so wait. You're telling my audience that my cup doesn't fall in the set of things that are not a theist.
Your cup is neither a theist nor an atheist.
I didn't say the word atheist. I said not theist. My cup is not a theist. Either my cup is a theist or it's not a theist. That is literally. Are
you going somewhere? I'll tell you what. Talk to your audience for a bit. Go through this, whatever it is, because it's really dull.
No, my audience understands it's just fine. They're all in agreement with me. They understand basic logic.
Wowed, Steve. They're wowed.
This is not complicated stuff.
No,
this is very simple stuff.
It's not complicated, Steve, that your cup doesn't have a view on the existence of God. That's not really very complicated.
Well, you're quite to you it is, it seems.
No.
So let me address this again.
Hang on, let me clarify this, Steve, just to have another try. I'm excluding cups from the set of things that we're discussing when we're talking about atheism and theism.
Not my argument.
That's my argument.
But it doesn't work to solve my argument. It doesn't resolve the issue.
It doesn't work that way, Steve.
No, it does not.
It's not a universal set, buddy.
Okay. You first of all, I think that you don't even know what a strict dichotomy is, because all things in the universe.
I tell you what. You go on for 10 minutes about how I don't know stuff. I've been making a complete ass of you.
Oh, okay.
But you go on. That's
not the way this is going to look. I assure you.
Get back to me. Give me a little heads up or something when you're willing to ask me a question, or you want to move on with the argument.
It's so funny, guys. I was telling you guys before. There's certain attributes of certain people in the new atheist TM communities that literally just argue like this. They don't understand the material. They have no idea of basic logic, and yet they continually put out misinformation, continually do not use any kind of evidence, do not use any kind of logical reasoning, because they've never studied any of this stuff. And they literally argue like flat earthers. As a matter of fact, I don't think I have it really available, but I have a list of the attributes of the new atheist TM, but that wasn't the direction I was going to go with this.
Ad hom.
That's not ad hom, by the way. Ad hominem is a type.
That's exactly. You're going on about people like this, and this is what they do. Steve, have you got anything more than that?
Well,
is that all you've got?
I can go over my. If you really want to go into my 10 reasons why I think the axiological value is better, because that's what I wanted to talk about. You want to do that? Okay, let's do that. So I'll use my screenshot here, and I don't think you're watching the outside, so you won't be able to see it, anyways. Okay, so I wrote this on Facebook, and it says, and I think you've read it, while some lay atheists who eschew normative and sound epistemological principles, logic, and peer-reviewed papers may use atheism as mere lack of belief, it does lead to the following consequences of such usages. In other words, what I'm saying is that the people that use these usages are stuck with these types of situations, these types of logical and epistemological issues. And by the way, some of these are not my own. These things are noted by Draper. These things are noted by Oppie. I just formalized them coherently.
For 2 name drops. I'm up to 15 now. Keep going.
Do you know who Paul Draper is?
Yeah.
No, I'm asking a question. Do you know who Paul Draper is?
Yeah.
You do? Who is he?
Yeah. How many cylinders does a CBX 1000 have?
Okay, so I'm going to assume you don't know who Paul Draper is. Is that correct?
Yeah, I know. Didn't he write the
entry in the Stanford Encyclopedia of
Yeah,
Philosophy.
but who is he?
Atheism.
Yeah, do you know? He actually is the head chair for philosophy of religion.
What
for
is his
Stanford.
pant size?
All right, so he.
How
Yes.
tall is he, Steve? Get on, just do the arguments.
Right.
Stop the bloating.
So here's the argument.
Do the argument.
By the way, I told you guys it's going to be a dumpster fire. I wasn't kidding. I should have had this on non sequitur, but oh well. We can't go back in the past. All right. Number one, using a non-standard and atypical usage. Do you agree that your usage, and by the way, we'll just put it out the audience, the usage I have for the word atheism is the theory or belief, doctrine, or claim that God does not exist. Your usage is that anybody who is lacks a belief is an atheist. Is that correct? I'm not going to try to straw man you. Is that correct?
No.
Okay. Your preferred usage is not lack of belief?
My preferred usage is that I'm a person who's not convinced of the existence of God.
Okay. The usage of the word atheism, which do you prefer? Atheism is held as merely a lack of belief or as the belief that God does not exist? Which one do you prefer?
It's not about which one I prefer. I know that different word usages exist, as they do for lots of words, Steve, because, of course, English isn't a prescriptive language.
Correct.
I use the definition of atheism most commonly found in places like the debate site on Facebook that you were thrown off of, not because no one would debate you, but because you were being a dickhead.
All right.
Because
again,
that definition that I'm using best reflects my position.
Do you agree?
So my position is that I don't believe that there's a God. I'm not convinced that there is a God.
Okay. Do you agree that according to Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and countless peer-reviewed papers, that the standard usage of the word atheism is understood as the belief that God does not exist, such that if you read a paper on atheism, it's going to be connoted as the belief that God does not exist. Do you accept that?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure what Draper means by referring to a standard usage in that sense. In that the Stanford entry on atheism also refers to the position that the usage that I use. And it also says that the usage I use is gaining in popularity and it's been much more prominent.
And Draper actually says that it shouldn't be, correct?
Excuse me. Even in academia, that usage is becoming more prominent. It's also probably the primary or the standard usage if you look at something like the Oxford Encyclopedia of Philosophy.
Yeah, so that's not true. Oxford, that's not true.
What do you mean by the standard? What do you think? What do you think?
That's not true. That is not true, and I'm not going to let you lie. Oxford Handbook of Philosophy and Oxford Handbook of Atheism both say the standard usage is the positive case, and it also says argumentatively the most common used. So both of them disagree with you on that.
What do you think that means, though, to say it's the standard?
It means in academia, the standard, if you write a peer-reviewed paper, that if you read the word atheist, the author is going to be telling the reader that he's using atheism in the positive case. That's
Except
standard.
where he isn't. But because in academia, you do see the usage that I employ.
Not very rarely. I can very rarely. I mean, listen to me. Out of 100,
you do see it.
Out of 100 papers, you might find one that uses it your way. And the only one the only one that I can think of is Flu's paper, The Presumption of Atheism, which was written in 1971, which was unanimously, almost overwhelmingly rejected by philosophers.
See it.
Yeah, but I very rarely. But here's the thing. Did you read Flu's paper? Did you read The Presumption of Atheism?
Yes.
You did. Okay. What does Flu say about the standard usage?
What is the population of Peru? And name them.
Here's the thing. If you say if you read something, I'm going to ask you to actually demonstrate your claims.
I read it years ago. It's a 1970 paper. Yeah. I'm 55. I read it when I was like 18. Okay. You think I'm going to quote it?
All right. Well, I can tell you what it says because I've read it numerous times. My paper refutes it.
No, don't worry. Point is that the definition I'm using is used in academia, isn't it? True or false?
Yes, very rarely.
Thank you.
But that's the point. Yeah, very rarely. My argument is that is that my usage is used more commonly by far.
So what?
Okay, you could see that issue. I'll give you that. I'm just going to say that you don't have an argument against that one. All right, so number one's true. Number two.
But I don't need an argument against it. No, it's not. So what if it's the standard? So what?
Your usage is atypical.
So?
Okay, but okay, so you don't care, but it is the case that
What is it about the fact that English is not a prescriptive language?
it has nothing to do with
US is not
prescriptive.
grasping?
Imagine a creationist saying, well, when I read a peer review paper, when I see the word theory, it just means guess. When I see the word evolution, it just means change. Those are non-typical usages. So you have a non-typical usage.
No, they're not.
Yeah. All right.
Are you talking about using the theory in the context of scientific theory? Because that would be wrong.
Right, and I'm using this in relationship to philosophy.
In the dictionary, any dictionary will tell you that the standard usage of theory is exactly as what they're saying.
No, it's not what it says. It depends on your dictionary.
No, it will.
But beside the point,
scientific theory is a different thing.
Besides the point, I'm talking
That
about.
is the point, Steve.
I'm talking about in philosophy. In philosophy and epistemology, the usage that's overwhelmingly used because it's the by far most prevalent. Because okay, but you agree that it is the most prevalent.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Number two.
It's not sure on relevance.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure that I deal with facts. This is a fact. Number one is a fact. You are using a non-standard.
What do you mean it's a fact? It's a fact that it's the most common.
It's a fact that you're using a non-standard and atypical usage.
It's typical. It's quite. No, I wouldn't say it's atypical.
In philosophy, it's atypical. I assure you. Draper.
Oh, in philosophy, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Number two.
There are certain words that appear in Klingon.
I just want to make sure that look at. I'm all about education. I want people to be able to read my things, go to an intro to philosophy class, and pass it. I took a lot of college courses, right? If I took, like, for example, I took a college course in, say, like calculus, right? I have videos on calculus. If I was to tell my audience something that was incorrect about calculus, I would be vilified for. I'd be chastised. Well, actually, they just mock me. But
that's not a good analogy.
It is a good analogy.
No, it's not. Because to use a different usage is not incorrect.
I never said it was incorrect. That's not my argument.
It's not incorrect.
I agree. That's not my argument.
Well, you're just making an analogy of saying that you would be incorrect. You would be telling the wrong thing to your students if you say blah blah blah. That's not the case.
But there's a fact of the matter to be had.
It's okay to use an atypical usage in academia, and academic articles exist that employ that usage. That's a fact.
Very few. I literally, the only one that I know of is the presumption of atheism.
I don't care what you know of.
How many do you know? Well, no, hang on. By the way, somebody wants to know the name of the paper. The name of the paper is called The Presumption of Atheism by Anthony Flew in 1971, which you say you read, but whatever. Name another paper that uses it that way.
Move on, Steve.
Okay, you don't have any. I have a whole bunch of papers that don't use it that way.
I don't have access to look up stuff right now. I'm sitting on the phone talking to you.
All right, so the next one. Number two, not using a usage taught as normative by a university. In other words, if you go to a university, they are going to use atheism in the positive case because if you go read academic works, that is going to be the typical usage from number one. Do you agree with that?
Relevance?
Just asking if you agree or not. I'm asking, do you agree?
Well, I don't think it's relevant. I mean, you can use different usages, and those resources recognize those different usages. What's your point?
All right, so I'm gonna just assume that you don't have a rebuttal for that one. Number three.
I don't need a rebuttal for that one. There's nothing to rebut.
Basically, the statement's either true or false.
Language, Steve.
But this is either a true or false statement. It's just statement true or false. Not using a usage taught as normative by any university. And what I mean by normative, what I mean by normative is that it's normally used in order to.
It's really simple, Steve. It's really simple. If you're discussing something with someone and you want to distinguish between theory.
I'm just going to interrupt me.
If you want to distinguish between theory in the common language and theory in a scientific sense, you just specify. If you want to distinguish between evolution as someone might use it in terms of the evolution of the car or the evolution of architecture, you can, as opposed to the evolution as it's used in the context of biology, you would just clarify.
All right, in the context of philosophy, am I putting out
an academic article and an academic discussion? You would simply need to clarify the usage you're using, and that's it.
In an academic domain, in the domain of discourse, in academia and philosophy, epistemology, am I correct in my usages?
I think you're incorrect in the way that you're thinking that matters.
What does that even mean? Either I'm explaining people things correctly or I'm not. You say that I'm not, and now you are saying, well, yeah, you are, but it doesn't matter.
There is no correct in that
Yes,
context.
there is.
It's not a prescriptive language, Steve.
I didn't argue. I literally have an essay on descriptive definitions. I have a whole essay on this, but you didn't read. So,
oh God, no, Steve! I've got a life.
I clearly.
Life is too short.
All right. So number 3, will hobble yourself in reading academic papers on atheism, as you will not understand the connotation of the word by authors of most peer-reviewed papers.
Rubbish.
How? Okay. So,
Absolute rubbish.
do you know there are people years ago when I first came on the scene that didn't even know that atheism was used in the positive case in academia? They had no idea. They thought it was only in the negative case because that's what they were told and lied to by groups like American Atheist and Atheist Republic.
The negative case goes back to the Greeks. It's an even more ancient usage of the term.
Actually, not quite.
And frankly, you're completely deluded. And that any academic article that was discussing atheism would define their terms. And any mix-up or any lack of clarification or any confusion or any need for normative or standard values is eliminated by the fact that in any decent academic article, they would just define their terms. Have you got something more interesting than this? This is a point so fatuous and banal. I can't believe we've wasted half an hour.
But you haven't refuted anything. You literally have done nothing, like nothing. All right, so April Von Ryan has a super chat for $5 Canadian. Thank you, April. Big words, bad. I guess so, right? So you're talking about the Greek. The word atheist does come from the Greek, but it actually comes from the French, right? From 1571. So the Greek, the Greek word atheos actually referred to Christians, correct? It referred to Christians that did not worship the state-sanctioned Roman pantheonic gods. They were without favor of the gods, and some people just call that without gods, but it wasn't really without gods. The term atheist... Can I finish a sentence before you interrupt me? The term atheos was Greek, and it meant without favor of the gods, because the God had forsaken the Christians, because the Christians left to go worship a monotheistic being. That's what it was referring to. Now, in the French... that is not what it meant. I cannot pronounce the French word because I'm not French, but I think it's atheisme, if I'm not correct. I don't speak French. Atheisme, but it meant the denial or disbelief of God. Denial means to assert false, and disbelief means to believe false. So the French word in the 1571, I believe it was, give or take, when I think that's at least when it was adopted in the English language. I think it was 1587. When it was adopted in 1571, when it first was used. I'm not mistaken, but dates are not my thing. But we'll say it's a early, mid to late 16th century. It was used in a way that's used now to express disbelief that you believe there is no God. That's how it was used 400 years ago. That's the usage it's used now in academia. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you don't understand that, and I'm not saying you as in you, but in general, if somebody doesn't understand that and they go read the word atheist in a paper, they're not going to get that the paper person using the word atheist, it's normative to use it. As a matter of fact, Draper points out in the Stanford Encyclopedia article, he even says at one time, and this wasn't very long ago, we're going only back a decade or two maybe, before Silverman wrote a case against God, or Fighting God, and Smith wrote in 1974 a case against God. Before all this started coming about, it was just, you say the word atheist in a paper, it was assumed the belief that God does not exist. It's only been in the last 10, 20 years that new atheists have came up and said, we wanted to use this word this way, based upon Flu's argument from 1971. That's a relatively new phenomenon. You do accept that, I would hope, because that's
relevance.
Anybody could go look that up, the history of that.
But how is it relevant? Am I allowed to talk now?
Yeah, sure, but I mean, you say it's not relevant, but those are my arguments. I'm literally telling you my arguments.
I know those are your arguments.
And are they wrong?
They're irrelevant.
But are they wrong?
What did gay mean 50 years ago?
Are they wrong?
What did gay mean 50 years ago?
Are they wrong?
What did gay mean?
It doesn't matter. I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole. Because
it's
gay,
because
the word gay to mean happy, or the word actually the word faggot actually meant a stick of a bundle of sticks.
That would have been the normative use of the word gay 50 years ago, wouldn't it? That would have been the standard.
But what is the standard use?
The word gay.
What is the standard?
What does it mean now?
It still means the same thing. It means gay, homosexual. somebody's attracted to the same sex.
What does quantum leap mean?
It was a show.
What does it mean though? When someone says it's a quantum leap in automotive technology, what does that mean?
It just means a huge advancement.
A huge advancement. Okay.
Which is kind of weird because when you have a quantum jump in orbital states, it's not really a big change. It just means that the valence electrons, the electron state has changed.
When an electron moves from one electron valence to another.
Correct.
It's a teeny thing.
In a quantized
but
state.
Now it means a really big thing.
Okay.
Because words change, Steve. Because English is not a prescriptive language.
Mark, I'm trying to ask you a question here. Mark, I discuss philosophy. The name of this thing right here is called 3am Philosophy. I write a blog. Will you let me finish? I write a blog on philosophy and epistemology that a lot of people read. Okay? My blog is well read. And by people that...
out there, Steve.
Can I finish a sentence before you decide to interrupt? I write a blog that people read. And my blog is factual as possible. If I make mistakes in it, I am corrected. I have a guy out there right now in my chat, and I will call him out, and it's free to. If I make a single solitary minor error, he's going to call me out on it, and I'm okay with that. I tell him thank you, and I correct it, or if I can argue against it, I will. That's just how my channel operates. I expect people to listen to my channel. To correct my mistakes, and then I fix them. Okay? So when it comes to philosophy, you're telling my audience that I'm correct, but it's irrelevant. I just want to make sure that you're saying that.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Fine. Number 5, you will make atheism based upon a specific person's psychological state, prohibiting atheism from being true. Is that correct?
Well, I don't think true or false even apply to atheism or theism.
Well, in your usage, no. In my usage, yes.
So I guess we're going down the same hole of if you're right, it's irrelevant. As the rest of your arguments,
are you just going to concede that all my arguments are correct then?
I'll concede that they're all irrelevant.
Well, that's not the argument, though. They're correct, though. Irrelevant. You could say anything's irrelevant. That's just dismissal.
I don't think they're even logical arguments, Steve. I think they're all
wait. Are you going to tell my audience that my paper right here?
When I can answer.
You're going to tell my audience. You're going to tell my audience that this right here, which is a grimace square or a semiotic square of opposition that you can't see, but my audience can. You're going to tell them that my arguments are not based on intentional logic.
I can't see that illustration, Steve.
I am aware of that because you're not watching the outside. But you've said you saw my paper. You didn't read it.
No, I didn't.
You didn't read my paper, you said.
Yeah, I didn't read your paper. I didn't say I saw it.
Oh, you haven't even seen it?
I've only discussed things with you online.
Right. So let me show you my paper. I'll be happy to do that. Give me a second here.
Steve, come on, get on with it, mate.
All right. So
say something.
I want to make sure. No, I want to make sure that you're seeing what I'm seeing here. One sec.
I can see that.
You can see
it's very small.
Right. I'm sorry, you're on a phone, right? You're on a phone? There's not much I can do about that. All right. So this is called a square of opposition, specifically a semiotic square of opposition. Okay? If you look at my paper, it is based on logic. You do not see that this is a logical truth table, that these are definitions set forth by Dr. Demi, that I have actually had to evaluate my paper.
I can't really read that, Steve.
Well,
it's too small.
What do you want me to do? You're on a phone. That's not my problem.
I don't know.
I offered to send you my paper, and you turned it down.
What I would like you to do, you asked me what I'd like you to do. Use your words to try and make some sort of rational case. Use your words, Steve.
I'm literally do that going through with my points here.
I'd love to hear about how I'm a coward. Why am I a coward?
Because
Steve?
you haven't addressed any of my actual arguments, which I said they don't do.
I'm right here, mate. I'm right here.
Great. So here's my argument. Here's my argument. Here's my argument.
Right here, aren't I, Steve? I'm right here.
Right.
So how am I wrong? What's wrong with me using the definition that I'm using? So I identify as an atheist like a huge amount of other people do, in the sense that, or the usage of atheism, that I'm not convinced that there are gods, that gods exist. In fact, I don't think that the concept of a God is even a coherent concept.
That's called Atheism.
I haven't heard a description of God that seems plausible.
So what does he lack a belief in?
Well, I can only lack a belief in things that are described to me. And when someone describes something to me, for example, like if you looked at someone like William Lane Craig, who describes his God as immaterial, timeless, and external to the universe, well, the set of all things that don't exist is also immaterial, timeless, and external to the universe. So he's essentially defined his God into oblivion in order to make a very poor version of a 3,000-year-old cosmological argument.
Do you know what?
So I don't find that convincing.
Are you a theological non-cognitivist?
As I said, I'm not sure that the concepts of God described to me.
It's a yes or no question. Do you identify as a theological non-cognitivist?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Do you identify as an atheist?
Yeah, I think that. I think I have a lot of.
All right, so you identify as an atheist. All right, so
I don't identify as such, but I think I sympathise with that.
So let's.
But there are other concepts of God. I don't identify for that as that mainly because there are other concepts of God that I have less issue with.
All right, so you don't hold to the belief that there are no gods in the universe.
No.
All right, so you would be, again, in a philosophical understanding, you would be construed as either an agnostic, or if you really wanted to go into atheism, you could go atheism. Is that correct?
What do you mean in a philosophical understanding?
The way these terms are normally used in philosophy.
But not exclusively used.
I did not claim that.
Just say what usage you're referring to and I'll tell you.
In philosophy, there's... Okay.
Forget the spiel. I got that you think it's the... Just tell me, what definition are you going for?
You're a philosophical agnostic.
Yeah.
Okay. So, if you're a philosophical agnostic, why, and this goes to the axiological value, why would you not want the word atheist to mean something completely different than that? Because the belief that God does not exist is not the same as philosophical agnosticism. They're completely different positions. One holds a direct response to the proposition. The other one does not. Why would you want them to have the same word? Because all you're doing is saying, well, if you don't have a belief in God, that's atheism to you, is it not?
What do you mean? Why don't I want? Do you think that I desire what words mean?
Oh my God, it's like pulling teeth.
Okay. Why wouldn't I want it to mean this?
Let me try this. You do not believe in God, correct? You have no God belief. You do not believe. You have no God belief. You do not believe in God, correct?
Which God are you referring to?
Any God. You have no. There's no God you believe in.
There are some gods that I do that I think are more plausible. I mean,
not plausible. Wait. Give me the name of a God you believe in.
Well, I can't remember the name, but there's an African tribe I was reading about, and their gods are simply a statue. The statue is the god.
But that's just okay. But that's just a physical object.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. You like to clarify terms. For the sake of this conversation, arguendo, let's assume we're talking about a supernatural being that, from all things contingent, must rely on something necessity. The necessity is that we would call God. Well, just to make it very simple, because I have a very what's called a stipulated definition for God in my works.
I think that's incoherent. I don't agree that such a thing is necessity.
The way you're going to use the word to God for this discussion is merely a being that must exist for all things else to exist.
Yeah. And as I said, I think
that's literally what I just said, only simpler, I guess. Okay, so
I'm just saying I think that's incoherent, and no, I don't.
How is that incoherent? That's simple alaic logic.
How can a being necessarily exist? What does that even mean?
For all of x. Okay, let me give you an example of a necessary being. Would you like one? Okay, all of x equals x is a logically necessary being. It's a priori knowledge, is it not?
What?
I will repeat it for you. I will speak slowly. For all of x equals x, which is the law of identity, is a priori knowledge that must exist in all possible worlds. Therefore, by definition, and this is prescriptive because this is how it works in possible world theory, it must exist in all possible worlds. Therefore, it is necessary being. That's an example of a necessary being.
So that's a hypothetical idea.
It's not. That is by definition a necessary being. A necessary.
No, it's it's kind of a semantic trick. It's like
not.
it's not an actual thing. Describe an actual thing.
A necessary being is something that must exist as true in all possible worlds. That is what it means in possible world theory.
This is true in all possible worlds. I don't think that that's coherent.
You don't think the law of identity is true in all possible worlds?
No, I think the law of identity is true.
Okay, that's called a necessary being.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. I assure you.
No, it's not.
Well, then you need to provide some academic literature for that.
Law of identity, Steve.
What?
State the law of identity.
Law of identity. I just did. For all of x, x equals x.
State it. just for humor me.
I just did for all of x, x equals x. That is
what?
That I literally have in my blog have the basics of logic.
I'll shut up. State the law of identity.
For all of x, x equals x.
Yes.
No shit. That's why I said how many times?
That's it. Well, you added all this other stuff to it.
Oh my fucking god, dude. By the way,
because they're not supposed to notice.
I'm not sure what you know at this point. Is kind of. I actually wrote a blog on this called "The Basics of Laws of Logic."
Tell me who read it. Did you read your blog?
My blog has like thousands and thousands of people. Blog? Yeah. So if you people go to my blog, I actually
people can read your blog.
So if
give me some names, Steve. Give me some names.
Dr. Rasmussen, Ozzy, Dr. Malpass.
Dr. Oz?
No. Ozymandias Ramses II. You don't know who he is. But my audience does. He's an epistemologist.
Wow.
I've had Dr. Oppie on to go over this stuff. Dr. Oppie has my channel. Yes. Grandma Oppie. All right. So I explained in my blog mathematical law of identity and expressed as A equals X. For all of X, X equals X, which is read as for all of X, X equals X, where equal sign is an equality. Do you agree with that, or identity?
Yep.
Okay. Can you explain to my audience, since I've been answering all your questions, can you explain to my audience, as I told you what the law of identity is, now tell them what does identity mean?
It is what it is, and it's not what it isn't.
No, that's not what identity means.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not. No, it's really not.
Okay.
Would you like me to tell you what it is?
Well, you've got Ozzy Osbourne on your side, so I'll leave you to that. You want to move on to this? It's getting late. It's been like an hour now.
So let me explain to you what identity means. Identity means that for all things instantiated, the equality remains the same. A equals A means if I instantiate A with anything, the equality is going to remain untainted.
You said this being. How does an entity, a being, personality come into the law of identity?
I don't think you've ever read anything on possible world semantics. Is that true? Yeah. Okay, that's true. All right. So in other words, I gave you examples, but again, you didn't understand.
I have actually read a little bit of that. I just find it really tedious. Again, where does the being bit come into the law of identity? Because you said you had necessary being.
Yes.
As part of your definition of the law of identity before. How did you sneak that one in there? Or maybe you could get Ozzy Osbourne to ring up.
This is very simple stuff. A necessary being is some truism that must be true in all possible worlds. Well, this is why. By the way, you balked at you. By the way, I want my audience to know this. You balked at my thumbnail because I was trying to explain to my audience. You come across. You want to think you're a big brain, but you don't know anything about what you're talking about. Like literally know nothing.
I balked at your thumbnail because I thought, first of all, it's really childish. But second of all, it's big brain Mark Peacock refutes my atheist axiological argument.
Which you haven't done.
Well, you don't need to refute an axiological argument. They're subjective. There's nothing to refute. It's a stupid title. It makes you look like an idiot.
I can tell, Mark, I can tell you right now that anybody that knows these topics is not going to be with you on this. I can just tell you right now, it's not going to happen. I will make the challenge, and you accepted my challenge. Let me finish. I didn't say. Did I say Dr. Oz? Ozymandias does not have a doctorate. He's an ABT philosopher. He's not a thesis philosopher.
Neither do you.
So I will make the challenge. If somebody,
you're a nuclear engineer from the Navy. That's what they used to call a boiler man, isn't it?
No, it was not nuclear engineering. No, it was not boiler tech. Completely different.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
No, I was not boiler tech. I was a machinist mate first class.
What's your qualification here, man?
I was a machinist mate first class.
You're a machinist. Yeah, so you know fuck all about this stuff, don't you?
Oh, no, I have had some formal training. Very little.
You've been getting everything wrong so far.
I've gotten everything wrong. All right. So let me make sure that I understand this. I have had multiple experts on my channel, including numerous PhDs. You do agree with that, right? You know some of the names I've had, right?
I listened to some of these exchanges, and it's like you're immune to learning.
All right, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Can you give me the name of one PhD that has said that I have a misunderstanding in any of the things I put out in philosophy or biology? Can you tell me the one?
Give me the name of one PhD that thinks that any of the stuff you're crying about matters or is significant in any way.
Anybody that's an epistemologist or a philosophy of religion?
Well, explain, how is it
So
relevant?
you're telling me. Wait, no, I really want to get this out here.
Normative values and things that don't need normative values, for which there's no problem in using an atypical usage of a word. There's no issue with that.
Okay.
Why is it a problem for me to use the usage
I literally was going over these top 10 things.
You went over it, but you didn't say anything relevant.
All right.
You didn't make a useful
if
point.
you're a philosopher of religion, by the way,
I'm not a philosopher. So don't worry about that. If you're a philosopher,
all right. I'm not talking to you.
Let's put it into context, okay?
I'm talking
to my. If you're the handyman at the local hotel here,
all right.
What's the problem with me identifying as a person?
I want to make sure that I get this out there before you interrupt me. If somebody has a PhD in philosophy, and I'm going to have probably Stephen Law on soon.
You don't.
I never claimed to. Stephen, I don't know if you know who Dr. Stephen Law is. He's really okay. So I've known Law for quite some time, and we're trying to have him on in December, but we weren't able to. So I'm going to try to reach out again and have him on. But if you're a PhD in philosophy and you think that I am putting out misinformation, all you got to do is email me. But I can tell you right now, I don't think that's going to happen. Because
can I ask you a question?
But you never answer anything. But go ahead.
I've answered everything you've said, Steve.
Go ahead.
How long have you been doing this?
I started getting into philosophy about a little over 10 years ago, maybe.
10 years? Yeah?
Yeah.
So what level of qualification have you reached in that 10 years?
Well, I've read a lot of stuff. I mean, you could challenge me on the stuff.
I'll say it slowly.
Yeah.
What level of qualification have you reached in that 12 years? Have you got a diploma? Or?
No, absolutely not. No, in fact, my whole channel is predicated. Yeah, my whole channel is predicated, and I make this very clear to my audience.
Yeah, but you've been doing this for 10 years. You could be a PhD by now if you had half a brain. Why haven't you?
Well, that's irrelevant.
Because you're useless at it.
So let me put this out to the audience. My whole channel is predicated that this stuff is not that complicated. That as a layperson,
it's more complicated than you can grasp clearly.
Okay, but you didn't know what identity was, so I mean, I don't know.
I did know what identity was, and I gave you the right answer.
All right, so do you know what the law of identity is?
You're the one that includes the definition of identity, necessary and being. I didn't do that.
Do you know where the law of identity is derived from? I mean, do you know where it kind of relates to?
Fuck, man. Making it look
clearly not. Okay, so you don't know what. Have you got another? Have you ever heard of?
You can only use this usage and the axiological. Your subjective. So we've got your opinion, the axiological, your useless opinion, and we've got. But this is the definition I prefer. What's your other argument? Let's move on to another.
Okay,
argument.
we'll move on to another argument because you it's the amount of straw man is ridiculous. All right, so how about the weak atheist special pleading argument?
Sure.
All right, so this one's real simple. If you allow for the usage of atheism in the negative, in other words, lack of belief as atheism, then you must allow a theist to use theism as a lack of belief that God does not exist. If you do not, that is called special pleading by textbook definition. What special pleading means, to exclude something without proper justification. So the WASP argument, which is a weak atheist special pleading argument, which actually I kind of included in my paper a little bit, is basically if you allow for atheism to be lack of belief that God exists, then theism could be construed as a lack of belief that God does not exist.
Yeah, I think that's just a bad way of writing the same.
How? And by the way, I do want to ask you this. I want to make sure. Do you argue that anyone who lacks a belief is an atheist? Do you argue that?
No.
Okay. All right. So you don't do it prescriptively?
No.
Okay. The biggest issue I have with people in the new atheist TM is they tell me I must be an atheist by necessity, that there is only theist and atheist.
I don't care what issues you've had with other people.
Okay, but you agree that's wrong, right?
I think that that's a valid way of looking at things, and I can understand their perspective.
No.
And
I want you to answer, please, the question: is that wrong? Do you must be either theist or atheist?
I think that there are a lot of caveats that need to be applied in that situation, and it depends on the definitions you're using and the word usages you're using. And so I prefer to be much more specific about what I claim or about what I'm not claiming. And so I wouldn't describe my position in that way, but I don't think they're necessarily wrong.
Oh, you don't think they're necessarily wrong. So you don't argue it, though. So if I say that I am neither atheist or theist, you accept that?
Do you believe in God?
No.
Yeah, you're an atheist.
See, okay, but now you're being prescriptive.
Hang on, let me clarify.
I'm not an atheist.
We're referring to the Christian God here, are we?
No, any God. I go globally.
I wouldn't think. I wouldn't say that.
Right,
who knows? You might know of the African tribe I refer to that worship a statue.
Well, we're talking about supernatural beings.
A rich and wonderful and glorious culture who worship landmarks, see landmarks.
But we're talking about supernatural beings.
What do you mean by supernatural?
Things that are not the set of natural. That can. How about this? That can prescriptively change the universe in some way. In other words, they can manipulate the forces of nature. They can change mathematical values. They can change nomological values, such as like the speed of light or the fine structure constant. If you can do that, I'm going to call you a god. I'm okay with this, right? If you can change the fine structure constant, I will say you're a god. If you say, hey, look, if you don't exist,
you don't believe in such a being.
I don't believe in such a being. No.
Yeah, well, I would think that it would be, to all practical purposes, you're an atheist.
Okay, but I'm not.
Unless you want to explore further definitions or semantics or
Okay, so in a nutshell,
other representations of God, but in the general sense of the word, yeah.
In the philosophical sense, am I an atheist?
I don't care about the philosophical.
Okay,
sense.
but that's what my.
I don't think you understand.
But Mark, my papers, my blog, and my channel is based upon philosophy. So I'm going to ask you
You know what? Get qualified, and that will be interesting.
Okay, so it's something. Look,
your paper will be interesting.
Mark. Oh, so you're saying that it's based upon qualifications rather than the quality of the work, because the people that are experts that have the qualifications. Let me finish. The people that have qualified, the PhDs, including Dr. Demi, which is my paper is basically on his semantic relationships for the square of opposition. He read my paper and he found no significant errors. His words. So you're basing it more on qualifications, which is an appeal to authority rather than the quality and content of the argument. That's what I'm saying by flat earth level.
Did your mum ever tell you, Steve? Did she ever say, "Wow, that's a fantastic drawing, Steve"?
The people that are experts have said my paper is valid and sound, and that's a good paper.
Your mum ever say something to you along the lines of, "Wow,
we're talking about the people that are experts.
We're
talking about the people that are experts. If the experts have found, but Mark, no, I'm not going to let you get away with this because now you're just bullshitting. The experts have said that I've had at least 5 or 6, I would say 6 minimum PhDs in philosophy.
Ozzy Osbourne, Dr. Oz, Ozymandias.
Two of which I know have PhDs in logic. Two of them have PhDs in logic.
Have any of them published on this?
What's that?
Have any of them published on this?
Yes. What do you think I got my paper on? Well, I literally have got my paper from Dr. Demi's work. He found no significant errors in my paper. My paper's only been out a year. Yeah, my paper's only been out a year. But again, if experts,
so that was a no.
No, of course, it's only about a year.
Fine.
But experts have not found any errors. You found no errors in my paper, correct?
Well, I found a number of issues in terms of relevance.
But you found no error. But you found no errors in my paper because you didn't read it. But you found no errors in my paper because you didn't read it.
I haven't read it.
Right, and this is my point to kind of encapsulate everything. New Atheist TM, which I would argue to put you on because you do fall in that category, will not argue my actual arguments like my paper, and so they have to straw man.
New Atheist, and I've said I'm not a New Atheist.
You are a New Atheist TM in my opinion, which is my opinion. which is my
How can you
opinion.
whinge about straw men and be addressing me as a new atheist at the same time?
In my opinion, you fall into what I call New Atheism TM.
Oh, I don't care.
Okay, well, I
Now you're going to do
obviously.
some no true Scotsman thing.
Yeah.
Because you don't eat, you like sugar on your oats.
So
I mean, what the fuck? I'm
by
not
the
a
way-
new atheist, Steve, and new atheism isn't a thing.
well, the Encyclopedia Britannica begs to differ with you. You
The
can go,
Encyclopedia Britannica's got an entry on elves too, you fucking idiot.
so
Doesn't mean they're real.
Oh, so
The
Daniel
dictionary's got
Daniel
no
Din is not real.
werewolves. Doesn't mean they're real.
By the way, if you want to stick around, I don't know what your plans are. I'm going to open this up so people can come in to join, because my whole point of this was show he can't actually refute any of my actual arguments. He never read my paper, which again I find to be cowardice, because
don't need to refute your atheist.
no, you don't. No, you really don't. No, I agree you don't. But here's the thing.
I don't need to refute your semantic argument about definitions, because it's not a prescriptive language. There is nothing to refute, Steve.
When you have an argument, which is a logical argument, and you can't refute them. Okay, so
There's nothing to refute.
let me see if I can bring this up for you. I don't know again how much time you have. Let me see here. Give me 1 second here. I people may come in. And let me put this over here. All right, so let me put this in here, and I'll screen share with you. All right, so this right here, if you can see this, can you see that? All right, so this is a logical proof. Proof weak atheism. Man, I wish I could. I wish I could do even monitor, but proof weak atheism equals agnosticism these are called a biconditional weak theism. This little image here, I came up with, and it was actually the legend was done by Landon Kurt Knoll, who is a two-time mathematician, world record holder in mathematics. This is how it's generally understood if you want to use your kind of usages. I have logically shown that your usage is equivalent to a weak theist. They're the same position. A weak atheist, which is a lack of belief atheist, is the same thing as a lack of belief theist.
Yeah, I've heard that.
You agree with that? You agree that my proof here, my concise proof, is logically valid and sound?
Well, I don't identify as a weak atheist, or but no. I mean, I don't think it's even a matter of logical being sound and valid. I mean, it's a point of semantics. It's not a logical argument.
Okay, but this is you asked for one of my arguments. Here's my argument: a proof. Can you go through this proof and tell me if this proof is correct or not?
Steve, you can't refute a word usage.
I'm not talking about word usage. Here's my argument in logical form for this particular argument, that all weak atheists are agnostic and weak theists logically. So if you merely lack a belief in God and you want to call that atheism, which you seem to want to do, the theist can say, well, if you lack a belief that God does not exist, you're a theist. Because that's the same freaking thing. You're telling me that you're telling me because I don't believe in God that I'm an atheist, even though I'm not.
No, I wasn't. No, I didn't.
You did. No, you literally did. My audience heard it. You said, well, you don't believe in God, you're an atheist. You said that.
I set out very clearly the conditions for that statement, and I explained that it was a conditional statement.
Okay. So unconditionally, you agree I'm neither theist or atheist, correct?
Steve, what is the point of all this?
No,
it's an argument about word usages in a non-prescriptive language.
Can you answer Can you answer the question?
What do you even mean?
I am.
How can you refute a description?
I am not.
It's a description of my position that I lack the belief in the God.
And so a description of my. So Mark,
you're saying you've got an argument. You've logically disproved a word usage. Are you mad?
So
this is why you haven't actually studied philosophy, Steve.
So.
Because they would laugh you out of the room.
Oh yes, that's just clearly going to be the case.
You don't understand philosophy.
No, I know he doesn't. I know.
Don't claim to.
No, you don't claim to. So you don't claim to know philosophy because you don't. Trying to rebuke somebody who actually has correct information, which you said is correct. You said that I put out correct information. You said that yes, this is how it's taught in philosophy, and yet you say my arguments are maybe irrelevant, but you have not said that my arguments are wrong. But when I asked you. When I said using my usages,
when you said about atheism and theism being true or false, it's a malformed question.
Yeah. And by the way, as one of my viewers point out, and he's correct in this, Mark is practically wrong. Hitchens, yes, et al. Yes, Hitchens et al. Were the four horsemen of New Atheism, absolutely. And so he says he's blown at claiming that Steve is an atheist. I think Steve has won the discussion, and Mark is a New Atheist TM. I agree.
I didn't claim that you're an atheist.
Okay, so I'm not an atheist.
I thought you were whinging about straw men before. Is this the best you've got?
You literally just told my audience that I'm an atheist. You want to rewind the tape?
Sure.
Okay.
Rewind it.
That's what you just said.
You said it.
Told Steve an atheist.
Yes. Did he not say that I was an atheist? Did everybody not hear that? Am I losing my hearing?
If you don't believe in God, and I qualified about what sort of God, that some people would say, yes, you're an atheist, and that it makes sense to think of those as two sets. We discussed it as being two sets. That people.
I'd say he's a theist. I'd say he's a theist because he didn't reject God. So there you go.
Sorry, I apologize. I missed that.
Yes. So since he didn't affirmably deny God, I'm going to say he's a theist.
Yeah, that's the argument that a person could make based upon your reasoning, Mark. Aflamo's using the same reasoning you are.
Great. But
you said before you don't think that anybody who doesn't believe in God is an atheist. You said that as well. I heard you. Okay, so I have said I don't believe in God, and I'm talking about a supernatural being. We'll make it very simple for you, Mark. A supernatural being.
I don't understand, Steve. I'll tell you what I really don't understand.
A lot.
Is that you're bloviating around the place on Facebook, calling people out and saying they're too gutless to face you and they're cowards and they don't dare to face you about what is essentially, even if you're completely right, a completely fatuous and pointless point of semantics.
But that's not the point.
It's philosophy.
But it's philosophy. The point is I'm calling people cowards because they won't face me on my paper, which you didn't bother to read. So you're a coward in that. Mark, you're a coward. Just own it. You're a coward. If you weren't a coward, you would have read my paper and you would have just taken in the information and found a way to refute it. You did not. You came on
here. Nothing to refute, Steve.
There's nothing to refute. Okay, so that's just what I'm saying. You are the Mark.
I'm supposed to refute your atheist axiological
You are on the level of a flat earther.
Axiological arguments don't need to be refuted, Steve. They're subjective. There's nothing to refute.
But a logical argument. But a logical argument is objective.
You haven't given me anything to attack.
I gave you my logical proof, and you just blew it off. Is this a logical? Do you want to see it again?
Yeah, 10-page paper for you to attack.
Yeah, my paper's 10 pages long, and not one single person has found a logical error with it or issue. Matter of fact, the guy that I based the paper on, Dr. Demi, has said he found no significant errors on it. So you didn't refute anything of mine.
So he said he read your paper, yes, and he said, can I quote? I found no significant errors.
Yes.
Well, he sounds impressed, doesn't he?
Yeah, actually,
he was just blown away.
Actually, he gave me some. He gave me.
Found no significant errors.
Yeah,
he was amazed. And has he taken this amazing discovery on board and reflected it in his own publications?
John, you want to add to this, John?
Well, it was just a bit going right the way back to the beginning when we were talking about sets. The thing that I most confused me about your position, Mark. It's Mark, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, thank you. The thing that most confused me about the position that you started from was when you're talking about sets, you've got a primary set A, which is the subset of everything within our universe, known or otherwise. And you said that if something doesn't believe in God, that person has to be a person. When I say God, I'm from the deist position, so any God.
Okay, I agree with you so far.
So if something doesn't believe in God, then it doesn't matter why it doesn't believe. It can be because it doesn't have the capacity because it's inanimate. It can be because it's never heard of the concept.
Correct.
That's the initial set, and that puts you in the subset.
I clarified, didn't I, John? That's not what I said, John, and I clarified. Would you like to
yeah, please go. If you clarified and I missed it, I apologise. Yeah, please do.
When we're talking about atheism and theism, we're talking about positions that people hold. The set is people.
John, can you explain to him why he doesn't understand the set theory on this?
So you end up with sets and subsets. So you start off with absolutely everything in the universe, and then you define your sets down by applying a set of criteria to them. So you've got a set of everything in the universe, and then you have a subset of things that do believe and don't believe in God. The reason why is totally irrelevant. Your initial parameters are do or do not, which gives you a true dichotomy. From there, you look at your subset, which is atheist, and you can then subdivide that. But you can then subdivide that group into subgroups as to the reason why. You can then refine out inanimate objects. You can then refine out people who have never heard of the concept.
Yeah,
but you have to start with a true dichotomy to begin with.
Yeah, Oppie would call them innocent.
How does that make sense?
Exactly.
To refine out to inanimate objects when you're talking about theism and atheism? How does that make sense to you, John?
Because if you're talking about it from the point of the axiomatic point of the argument, then you need to go down to the lowest, most common denominator, which is things that exist.
Yes.
If you eliminate that from the first, if you don't start from the bottom and build up, then you've left a massive hole in your philosophical argument that could let fuzzy edges in through the back door, which is exactly what you're doing.
Exactly.
Now you can, through
the back door by specifying, and frankly, I'm sort of assuming that most people are going to make the same sort of assumption when they talk about atheism and theism. That atheism, when I said atheism, people who do not believe in God or who are unconvinced of the existence of God, and theists are people who do believe in the existence of a God. So both of those are within the set, subsets of the universal set of all things, aren't they? And I'm just working on the assumption that anyone here in this discussion would be sane enough to assume that we're talking, because it's expressed in the definitions here, about people.
You're not even remotely understanding what John just told you.
No, look, the people, the argument, if you're having a conversation with somebody and you're defining terms, like just as a for instance, and I'm fairly certain Steve would disagree with this. If I was in the pub having a drink and somebody said to me, oh, are you an atheist, a theist, or an agnostic? I would say, well, technically, I'm an agnostic because I don't believe in any gods because I've not been presented with evidence that convinces me. And because I believe my beliefs, knowledge is a subset of belief. So, but if I said to somebody, I'm an atheist, I would have to caveat that with, look, philosophically speaking, I'm an agnostic. But the colloquial term that you're referring to, what Steve refers to as the last 2 decades of sort of the new TM atheist definition, is I've not been presented with evidence to convince me that a God exists, so therefore I'm an atheist.
Yeah, let me ask you, John, why would you think I disagree with you on that? Because actually, I don't.
The only reason I say that, Steve, is because my personal interpretation of you is that you don't like the erosion of the philosophical terms.
Yeah, you're right.
Because we've now got pushback.
Yeah,
so I would define.
Yeah.
I would use the term, but I would use the term atheist in a colloquial context, but I wouldn't use the term atheist in a colloquial context without defining what I meant. And that's where I have a little bit of, and that's where I have a little bit of agreement with Mark, in that as long as we seem to be having the stumbling block with these conversations where there's the hardcore philosophy, which, as far as I'm concerned, the set theory basis of atheist and theist is about as irrefutable as you can get in set theory logic.
Yeah.
You started at the ground up. You started with.
I started with axioms.
Yeah, but where Mark's coming from is the colloquial point of view. So we've got this disconnect.
No, I know. I totally get that, John, but let me run this by you, John. So I understand that. The point is made, though. My arguments are not logically incorrect. And if you don't want to...
No, not at all.
If you want to use some of the usages, okay, you're perfectly allowed to do so. I mean, if you read I have a page on this called my positions to prevent strawman abatement. My position is use any usage you want, but you cannot deny there's epistemic and logical issues with those usages. Mark seems to deny that there is. And that's silly because my proofs have shown there's issues with them. Now, if you accept that, that's fine. Go run with it. Go with God, as they say, right? Like, hang on, let me finish, please. Genetically modified skeptic, right? Have you heard of him? Well, he genetically modified skeptic has basically said, look, Steve, I agree with you on this, but, I just use these terms colloquially for demographic reasons or this. I have no argument with him on that. Okay, go with God, so they speak. But when you tell me that my arguments are wrong, then we're going to have a problem. So you see that?
Can I
Do
just-
you agree with
Mark?
that, John? Though, real quick, do you agree with me on that?
No, yeah, of course I agree with
Okay,
that. You
okay,
know,
go
if you've got an epistemic, a solid epistemic foundation, then somebody claiming that you're wrong about
That's my
it,
point.
then,
That's my
you know,
point. Thank you.
then they need to bring receipts, which
Right.
is obviously
They don't do,
which is obviously the case.
which they never do.
But Mark, can I just going back to Mark? Obviously, with what's the reason? What's the rationale for starting at with this true dichotomy of theist and atheist, for not starting at the lowest common denominator? Is it simply because, as far as you're concerned, the theism only makes sense for an entity that is capable of believing in God, capable of assessing a rational argument? Okay, so at what point do human beings become capable of believing in a rational argument? The reason that you've got to start at the very, very basis is because how old is a child? How old is the fetus in utero? At what point does something with neurological infrastructure become capable of conceiving those arguments?
I can
If you
clarify.
start at the very, 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 very ground basis, you've already encapsulated all of those people, which means you don't miss anything. You can obviously then add subdivisions. And once you've got a formal set of sets, you can go, my argument starts from this set and works its way upwards. It's like clades in evolution.
Can I clarify then, John?
Yeah, please.
Okay, well, this came from an online conversation where I'm assuming I'm talking to other adults in the common language. So I'm assuming that's the set of people. The set of people are people having these conversations who are aware of these terms and are talking about the existence or the non-existence of God and expressing their positions. And I don't include rocks in that. And I think it's pretty safe to think that any rational person wouldn't necessarily include rocks.
All right, so let me ask you that real quick. Are you know who Aaron Ra is?
Yeah.
Aaron Ra argues rocks are atheists. You think he's irrational?
Funny.
I think he's got a different opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you on this, and I have thought on this particular topic, trying to explain to people that rocks are not atheists. But here's the problem, Mark, and I want to make this very, very clear to you. Using your usages, it is logically necessitates that rocks are atheists using your terminology. I have proven this using logic. This is why, let me finish. This is why Aaron actually argues. Let me finish. This is why Aaron Ra argues rocks are atheists, because he knows that is logically entailed by your usages, and same as John knows this because it starts with axiomatic sets. And John will agree with this, I am sure.
Yeah, no, it's outside of his work on clades and phylogenetics. That's one of the few things I actually agree with Aaron Ra on. So,
using his wait, hang on. I want to make sure you don't argue rocks are atheists, right?
Rocks are atheists?
John, you don't argue.
Oh, no. Sorry. I misheard you. No. Sorry.
But you agree. You agree though. Using Aaron's and Mark's usages by logical commitment, it necessitates. He can't just hand wave it away by saying people.
Yes.
Okay. That's the point.
No. You can't. This is one of the fuzzy gray areas.
Mark doesn't get that. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And by the way, I love Aaron for his cladistics and his phylogenetic arguments.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's. I also think he's hilarious. I mean, there's a reason why he commands huge audiences when you put him on stage.
Wait a sec, John. Do you know why Aaron and I had a falling out over? I mean, do you know what it was on this particular topic because he doesn't. Wow. There's two things.
Well, from memory, it was a discussion that you were having about between the distinction between atheist and non-theist.
Well, sort of. There's two things, John. One, he thinks that the usage of the term atheism as a belief that God does not exist is a Christian thing. He thinks only Christians do that, which he's absolutely wrong on. That's all. Atheist philosophers accept this. Okay, so he's wrong about that. But when he actually finally blocked me on Facebook, and I swear to God,
more questions for me? I've got to go. Has anyone got anything else they want to ask me before I leave?
No.
Yeah. So, I still don't understand the reason for specifically from the lens of set theory, why you would remove things that don't believe in. You would start your set at the point at which you're only dealing with entities that have the capacity for believing in God, when you can't identify where that capacity for believing in God starts. It's this how many grains of sand make a heap? How many neurons do you need to consider God existing? Just bring it down to the lowest common denominator, and then your argument.
Are babies atheists, Mark?
It's a good question.
That's why I don't understand why you wouldn't.
Well, let Mark answer. I mean,
Yeah,
Mark,
and not to mention the fact that there are loads.
Like I've tried to make it clear that when I'm talking about atheism and theism, I'm talking about the beliefs that people hold. You don't understand that?
So now it's the belief that people hold.
Of course, it's about beliefs.
But you said it was okay. So I want to ask you: are we born atheists?
Atheism and theism speak to what people believe. Gnosticism and agnosticism speak to what people know.
No, it's not. That's not what agnostic means. Not at all, by the way.
That's really what it means.
No, it's not. I assure you. It really doesn't. That's a whole different topic that you're incompetent on. But I want to know: are we born atheists?
I think it would be more accurate to say that you're born without a belief in God.
And we're born, yeah, but that's not, no kidding. We're born without a belief that God doesn't exist either. But my question to you is, are we born atheists? It's either yes or no.
You could argue different sides of that. I think it's a pretty silly argument.
Right,
What do you think?
But,
What do you think,
but this is
dude?
what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying.
What the hell do you think, dude?
Why is it so difficult to answer the correct questions? Do you think that we are born atheists? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, what's your opinion, dude? Sorry, but I'm getting a little
I
pissed.
think we're born without a belief in God.
That is straw manning me because that's not the question. Well, this is what I noticed about, again, new atheist TMs. They will not take the question asked. They have to change the question. My question to you is very simple. Do you hold the position? Do you hold the position we are born atheists?
I think people are born without a belief in God.
Okay, you just did it again. This is dishonest.
Wow.
You are dishonest, Mark. I've given you no.
Wow.
I have given you
as a position of not believing in God.
I have given you 3 times a chance to answer a straightforward freaking question.
Under the usage of atheism I use, yes, babies are atheists.
All right, so you're convinced using your usage is that babies are atheist, which I find to be just abhorrently wrong. What, Mark? What, Brandon?
What was that, Brandon?
Well, babies can't be atheists. They can't.
Yeah, because they don't have the position. You said to John,
hold beliefs.
right? Exactly.
Under what?
You literally have said you have to have the capacity to hold beliefs, right? You have to be able to evaluate the proposition. Babies can't do that. How are we born atheists if you can't even evaluate that? That's what John's saying. But you have to start somewhere. I start with the basics. I start with the axiomatic foundations.
What sort of moron goes around on the internet calling people cowards
You
because
are
they
a
don't want to
coward.
engage in some fatuous
You're an intellectual
discussion
coward. You are an intellectual coward. I'm just going to say it. You are an intellectual coward. If you weren't an intellectual coward, you would have read my paper. And if you
in a
weren't,
non-prescriptive language, that was even the point, Steve.
you're an intellectual coward.
You know what you should do? Here's my final thought. Okay?
Oh,
You
good.
can hear
Can't
me
wait.
or speak over me or do whatever you want. But here's my final thought.
Go ahead.
I think what you should do, Steve, is put your money where your fat fucking mouth is and go and study philosophy. And when you get a PhD, come back and what you say might start magically
So again, I want to make sure that people understand this. His arguments are based on qualifications, not content quality.
Why? Because of a degree.
So everybody who talks about these subjects, Arya doesn't have a PhD. So everybody who has to talk about these subjects have to have a fucking PhD. Okay.
Does he have his PhD?
No, he doesn't have a degree either. He works for what do you say, on air conditioning or something, a hotel?
Why do the good
Yes.
fucking matter when it comes to
He works
education?
for a hotel.
anyway?
I mean, again, I don't care what people work. I do loss prevention, but people that are in the philosophy arenas have never once said I lack abilities to understand concepts. And a matter of fact, I'm pretty well known as a layperson who has a substantive, I guess, niche in this particular area. And that, in fact, you look at my icon here, my avatar, that's from a show that I did with Reasons to Believe with Dr. Fuzz Rana, because I knew what I was talking about. They gave me my own show with them in studio in Fullerton.
Hey, look, I mean, the argument from authority pisses me off. I mean, I run
That's
a
all it
company
was,
that
right?
specializes in...
Yeah.
But basically, yeah, well, the
But
argument
you're a
from authority...
philosopher, John. You do philosophy.
Well, I mean, I don't have any formal training, but I mean, what I was going to say for the argument from authority, the thing that pisses me off is I run a company that specializes in timber frame buildings. I'm based in the UK, as you
I thought you did
may
philosophy
work out
because
from
you always talk about philosophy.
gorgeous
online.
accent.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
No,
Okay.
I find it interesting. And basically, I work 8, 9, 10-hour days with noise cancelling headphones in, and I'm listening to audiobooks, I'm listening to podcasts, and because I find the subject interesting. And you know, I mean, I don't have formal training in it. I'm a Bachelor of Science. I've got an architectural technology degree, so structural engineering.
But either
environmental
you're
design,
right
stuff
or
like that.
right? Like for example, John. I mean, I was one of the objective things I tell people, like 0.99 repeating equals 1, right? Because that is objective math that any mathematician is going to agree with. No mathematician in the world is going to disagree. Besides N.J. Snelling, what is it? N.J. Wildberger, because he's a financist, but even he says that in the real numbers, 0.999 repeating does equal 1. But I had a guy today, he cited me a blog from the Medium, which is a host for blogs, which is nothing wrong for a blog. I write a blog, but he cited that as authoritative over the actual academic works on the subject.
Yeah, I mean, the bit that I still am struggling with Mark is why he can't just concede the point that you start off at the most common denominator. Otherwise, you end up with this hole where you go, okay, well, you don't even have to get out of you're not even out of the realms of biology before starting at the point at which that he starts. His argument loses its axiomatic basis because you end up with the problem of, you end up with the problem of how many grains of sand make a heap. At what point is something neurologically capable of considering the argument? If you're making a definition, if you're making an assumption, or if you're making a determination based on the capacity to consider the argument, then you've just got gaping holes in it that people can tap dance around. And it seems like
that's Sorty's
paradox.
Three grains.
Trying to do.
I can't remember his name. Sorty's paradox, is that what it is? Sorties. I think it's Sorty's paradox. Is how many? If you have a heap of sands, how many grains of sand do you need to remove until it's no longer a heap? Right. It's very similar to the hypothesis, right?
Yeah.
Which, by the way,
it's the same thing in the opposite direction. It's how many grains you have to add. It's the same rational argument.
By the way, I resolved the hypothesis pretty easy. Want to hear my resolution of it? And you're gonna laugh, and it's
yes, please.
This should be interesting.
This is trivial. And by the way, you could, I do think you can make an argument from mereological nihilism, right? But neurological nihilism, I don't know if it really resolves the hypothesis problem, because you're basically saying the hypothesis doesn't really exist, right? But to me, the hypothesis is no longer the hypothesis when you no longer call it the hypothesis, and that goes into what's Kripke's, what means by a rigid identifier, right? So that would, if you look at Kripke's versions of rigid identifications and things of that nature, as soon as you're no longer calling it something, that's when it's no longer what it is. But I know that's a cheesy way of looking at it from Kripke's rigid designations.
You're essentially defining your way out of the problem.
Right.
But...
No, I agree with that. Right. Yeah. I said it was cheesy. Right? I didn't say it was, but whatever. But sorties, yeah, give me those sorties. But again, do you guys? Okay, so let me ask you guys. This guy, I will give him credit that he had the balls to come on and embarrass himself, so he's not a coward in that way. But I do think he's an intellectual coward that he didn't even bother to read my paper, which I did offer to send him. He did tell me that I swear I remember him saying that he understood the argument, which clearly he didn't. But do you not think that an intellectually honest person would say, okay, I'll read your argument and then I will go through it and explain to you why I believe that it's wrong, which he did not do.
Yeah, I mean, obviously hasn't read it. It's interesting. I mean, the set the set tables, they can be quite daunting. I mean, I only have a very rough and ready understanding of them myself, but again, that's because
same here. I haven't had math in third. I took calculus in 94 or 5, I guess. I don't know. It's been a while.
God, I can't remember my maths and further maths at college, and then I went on to university, and it was.
Did you take calculus?
Yeah. I mean, well, further maths. So I mean, the way the education system works in the UK, you can either just do once you get it to A level, so that's 16 to 18. You've got your you can just do maths A level, which is pretty hardcore. You're doing surds, combinatorics, that sort of stuff, and then you go into further maths, which just delves deeper into those fields.
Oh yeah, UK is a little bit different. Yeah. Anyways, James. Welcome, James. James, are you a free belt? A free Billy?
Yeah, I'm free rebel.
Yeah, free rebel. All right, yeah. Go ahead. What you got for us, brother?
All right. I hear someone talking in the background. Is that Mark slightly muted?
No, I think you might be listening to the video as well.
Hold on.
You need to turn that off.
Let me shut. Oh, hold on.
Yeah, go ahead. Take your time.
Oh, here it is. Here it is.
And by the way, love the beard, man. Love the beard.
All right. I'm a theist, but let me give me my background, okay? Because I'm not highly educated, but I got some serious questions I want to ask you, okay?
Absolutely, go ahead.
High school education. Out of high school, did 4 years in the Marine Corps.
Semper Fi.
Did some odd jobs. I got in construction trade, and I did almost 20 years in the electrical trade doing commercial and industrial work. I tell people I'm an electrician, but I don't have the papers to prove it. My knowledge on electrical theory goes up to calculating loads, if you understand what I mean.
Sure, absolutely. I've had electrical theory.
Okay.
I was a Navy nuke. We have to take electronics and electrical distribution.
Awesome.
systems.
I saw that I looked up some of your information. I saw that use nuclear Navy, whatever you just said. Just so y'all know that's listening to me on panel and in chat, I do have health issues. I have epilepsy due to sleep apnea, and one of the side effects is giving me a speech impediment. So I will mispronounce big, fancy, educational words.
It's quite all right.
And Steve, for your
I do
audience, Steve, for your me and say the correct words so your audience knows what I'm saying, please do. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mispronounce words all the time because I have a speech impediment as well. So I get you, man.
Well,
I get you.
When it comes to multi-syllable words with a lot of L's, I know how to say it. I just can't get the information to my tongue.
Mine's R's. I can't roll my R's.
Okay.
My Spanish teacher wanted to destroy me because I could never roll my R's. I went to speech therapy for years. Yeah, go ahead. Which questions, man?
Yeah, okay. I've heard about universal sets before. Okay, but that was years ago, and it wasn't piquing my interest. Okay, I've been a theist all my life. Okay, but counter theist claims, such as to use the word in the T and A, whatever, atheist, not believing in God. I understood as a theist, but when you break it down into the universal set, this is where I'm gonna have problems. Philosophical way, I made it. Cool. It does not compute to me.
Okay.
And my question is how do you make that work in the theistic mind?
Okay, so let me see if I can address it, and then John could take a stab. So, when we mean by
Sure.
universal set, we mean all things that exist in the reality.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I don't know if you've ever looked in what's called infinities. There's different orders of infinities. There's different levels of sets. Matter of fact,
I've heard a little bit about it.
there's an old problem in philosophy. Does the set of all things contain itself? Also known as the barber problem. If a barber can only shave all men who don't shave themselves, does he shave himself? Right? The barber paradox. Who's typing? Is that a Flamo?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
not me.
So this has long been resolved with first order logic and things of that nature. But basically, it was does the set of all things contain itself? But when we talk about the universal set, we're talking about all the things that exist. So you exist, I exist, anything that exists, anything that's not in a impossible world. So in that universal set, everything that exists has the negation of, meaning that if you have two sets that are side by side, one set contains an element such as my cup, and then the other set doesn't have the element. In other words, the element can only be in one of two sets. It cannot be both, but it must be in one or the other if it exists. Okay, so you are a theist, right? You're in the set of all things that are theist. Flamo's a theist. So you two would be in the set of theist. Brandon and myself and John, I think, John, you're not a theist, right? Are in the set of not theist. So we all are in the U set, or on the universal set, but you and Flamo are in the set of theist, and then we're in the set of not theist.
Okay.
And if you combine the set of theist and not theist together, you now have the set of all things because they're complementary sets. John, does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. I mean, obviously, James, are you better at processing things visually than audibly? Is that?
It don't matter. It don't matter.
It doesn't matter. I mean,
I'm on a phone, so I won't see it.
Oh, no. What I mean is that I tend to think about sets and subsets from the perspective of like a Venn diagram.
Okay.
It's not a perfect analogy, but if you draw a ginormous, great big circle on a piece of paper, that is the universe, and then you draw two overlapping circles. In within that circle, one of them is theist and one of them is atheist, and where they overlap is essentially the non-theist or the agnostic or whatever the case may be. So you essentially, or like clades or something like that in terms of sort of ancestry. You end up with subsets. It's my great grandfather.
Either a dog or not a dog.
Yeah.
So you have two sets. Anything that's a dog, a chihuahua goes in the set of dogs. Cat goes in the set of not dog. Simple as that. And then if you combine everything, you got everything. Yeah.
Yeah, you're stacking dichotomies.
Quick question about the dog or not dog.
Mm-hmm.
John, he's talking about, in universe, they're complementary and they overlap.
No, they don't overlap. They're mutually exclusive.
They're mutually exclusive.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Either. Okay. Let's say like I have this like a chihuahua. A chihuahua is either a dog or it's not in the set of dogs. It's in either one. It's in one or the other, but it cannot be in both, and it has to be in one or the other. They're called mutually exclusive. It's called mutually exclusive and jointly exhaustive, meaning that they're mutually exclusive. It can only be in one or the other, and jointly exhaustive means it must be in one or the other, and cannot fail to be. In other words, if a dog exists, it must be either in the set of dog or in the set of non-dog. There's no other options. Jointly exhaustive.
Gotcha.
Okay. By the way, can I ask what kind of theist you are? Do you mind? Are you a younger creationist?
Me? Yes.
Okay. By the way,
Heat problem.
by the way, I don't know if you watched my stuff before. I'm very much anti-young creationist, right? But I have a lot of
I'm new to your channel. This is my first live stream. I appreciate you having me on. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm new.
Interesting.
You popped this cherry. I'm a cherry popper again. I haven't done that in years. A lot of people. I'm thrilled. Thank you. I'm honored. And
You know what it comes down to is my beliefs are so old. They're not challenging enough to me. My mind is wanting to know more knowledge because
that's awesome.
and it's not that I'm looking for evidence to break the foundation of my beliefs, and I'm not looking for evidence to bolster my beliefs. I'm just trying to see, it's like with Christians, you got evolution and creation. Okay, I'm a creationist, but when I talk to evolutionists, I'm not going to pull a Kent Hovind and call him crazy.
Well, I know Kent, right? I don't know if you know that
Personally.
Well, I mean, Kent. I've never met him in person.
Oh, anyway.
He
was on the show. He was on Steve's show.
I'm infamous for bringing Kent from obscurity after his jail sentence.
Yeah. When I first found him on YouTube a few years back, I watched all his stuff, and I'm like, yeah, this is some good stuff because it was filling in holes of the knowledge I had that I didn't understand. But at the same time, I'm like, ooh, that's a rock. Throw that out.
Yeah. Well, I actually went through and
can I just interject something here? Probably one of the funniest things Kent Hovind ever used to say. Honestly, it literally on the floor, almost wetting myself with laughter. So, excuse me, Mr. King, Mr. Duck, Your Highness, could you just explain that, for the average listener?
What are you talking about, King Crocoduck?
Yeah, the King Crocodile.
Yeah,
Can you just explain that to the average listener?
I love that. It's so funny because I had
you being a sub-average listener, Kent.
Because Kent's dishonest. I had so James, after Kent came back from his jail sentence for tax problems, I had kind of like got him back on, and I had him debate Aaron Ra, which got like 600.
Oh, I saw that. I saw that.
That's my favorite of all time.
I love that debate. It is anybody who likes debates.
I watched that live.
It is one of the best debates. And it got
Aaron
like 3
is the yin to Kent's yang.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted Aaron to do it. Aaron was perfect for this. He really wanted to debate.
You set that up. You set that up.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I set up and hosted it. Dude, I was the host. That was on the Non Sequitur show.
Yeah,
I was the co-host.
I watched some of his stuff. It's just when he comes down to like I said, I'm looking for new knowledge. It's like when it comes to like creation and evolution, it's like I don't believe in evolution, but I find it so freaking interesting that when new stuff comes out, I watch it because it's filling in holes in my beliefs or unbeliefs at the same time.
Well, let me ask you because again, I had King Crocoduck and can't come on, and it was like John said, it was brutal. First of all, I do want to thank you for your service as a Marine. I was, as you know, Navy.
That's why I saw the Eagle Globe.
Yeah, I saw the insignia, and dude, look, I was living with a Marine for quite some time. I'm a huge fan of the Marines. I know Marines and Navy kind of have a quarrel, a fun quarrel, but I have the utmost respect for the Marines. I really, really do.
My two sons, my oldest, he did time in Army National Guard. He ended up getting medically separated.
5, man.
And my youngest son, he's 25. He is now in Air Force school for firefighting.
That's awesome. I just had a real life.
To tell you how dedicated this 25 years old. He's not messing around. Before he went to Air Force boot camp, they call it academy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a Marine, I call it boot camp. He was already nationally certified EMT. So when he goes to that school that he's in right now, there's 2 weeks that he's already covered.
Yeah, he's aced it. Yeah. No,
he's a smart kid. He knows what he wants to do. But anyway, back to the question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of lost now. Real quick on Kent. I loved, when I first found, I loved the information, but I find him boring.
Well, because he's one, he's ignorant, and two, he lies. I mean, Kent's a liar. It's not even a matter of subjectivity. He has said on the non sequitur show things that were not true. And in fact, I remember because he had said, "Oh, I'll do part 2," and then he had lied to the people saying that we gave him, we told him that he would get equal time. Now, one of the things, like when Kent comes on this channel, he has to get equal time. I did promise him that, and I've always given him equal time. And if you watch the King Crocoduck Ken Hovind debates, there's 3 of them. I gave Kent equal time, and Kent never balked at that. But on the non sequitur show, he was never promised that. It was Thunderdome. It was you're going to talk to Aaron Raw, and you guys are just basically going to do it yourselves. Yeah, battle it out. And I only jumped in when Kent was so far off the rails, I had to bring it back because that's my job.
I didn't see that show. Who has that on their YouTube?
That's on my other channel.
It's on the non sequitur show.
I have 3 channels.
Okay.
Yeah, this is my personal channel, but I have the non sequitur show, which. Like that video got 750,000 views. You're the non sequitur?
Yeah.
That's me.
Oh my God. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. Are you the non sequitur? Yes, I'm Steve McCrave, the host of the non sequitur show.
That was awesome.
Wow.
Yes.
That's cool, man.
So yeah,
I don't agree with everything you say on the non-sec show, but
that's fine. No, I
still watch.
No, dude, I have younger creationists in my audience all the time, and even though I am anti-younger creationist, that my creationists come in here, we have fun. Look, Flamo's a theist. We've never had an issue. Flamo's, I'm all about the discussions, right? How about the topics? And so, going back to the whole younger creationist stuff, though, it sounds like to me you're maybe moving past that. Have you ever thought about, have you listened to my discussion with Dr. Hugh Ross I had recently?
No.
Do you know who Ross is? He's from Reasons to Believe. He's an older creationist. Dr. Ross, he's an astrophysicist.
I've heard his name before, but I haven't seen that one.
I think you might be interested in an organization called Reasons to Believe. I've worked with them before. Back at this image is from Reasons to Believe. They are older creationists.
Let me throw this at you real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Before I came on the panel, I asked a question in the chat that anybody to answer. Okay, this is trying to keep it on sets. Theism, not theism, right? Mm-hmm. That's the talk. Okay, my question was: if someone claims not theism, but still believes that crystals, emeralds, rubies, whatever, have any form of supernatural ability, are they still not theist?
Yes,
theism?
Because theism is on the deity itself.
That's still
right.
theism.
What happens to this, and this is a great question, it's actually a more prevalent question than you probably think, because in some of the literature, in more of the older literature around the 19th to 20th century, some people use the term atheism synonymously with naturalism. Right?
Yeah. Okay. I remember hearing about that way back in the day.
And so what you're talking about would not fall under naturalism, right? It would fall, again, non-naturalism is synonymous with supernaturalism. This is what's just basically called a semantic substitution. You're taking this, and this goes back to your set theory. You have naturalist and non-naturalist. You have natural and non-natural, right? So everything that's not natural falls in the non-natural set, and both of them are everything that's in the universal set. So if God exists, that's what we consider to be in a supernatural set. And that's just because that's how we think of these terms, right? When we talk about like, for example, your crystals, the way we connote these things to the average person is that this is not something we experience day to day. These things are not what we consider to be natural, right? I mean, this is a general understanding of the terms: natural, non-natural. There are people that argue, well, if crystals do have special powers, healing properties, we would then put them under the natural set. I disagree with that because we are distinguishing between what we do not really recognize every day by day-to-day basis. If you saw like an angel come down, I think most people would go, hey, that's not typical. That doesn't happen every day, right? So we're going to put that into the non-natural because these things are just so outside of the norm. They're not able to be just, experienced by science and defined by laws of the universe. They're outside of our epistemic.
First time to study angels. If we can find angels, we can study.
We can
angels.
study them, sure, but if they violate the laws of physics, I'm going to put that under supernatural. Okay, personally.
Definitely.
So, but that
it'd be like
okay, real quick, so I can make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. Regardless of the set, if someone believes that crystals have supernatural abilities, that's a supernatural part of a different set. So it's a natural to the aspect of theism, not theism.
Right, because in the non-natural set, you have the theist and you have we'll call them crystal believers. Both of those fall under non-naturalism, but theism is about God, right? Theism is about the belief there's a supernatural being. That still is in the non-natural set. This goes into what John's talking about of subsets, right? The subset of you could put the subset of theism into the natural and non-naturalism, right? Yeah. Real quick.
Because I got memory issues too. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No.
I understand what you're saying about theism and crystals as on that set. So look, changing the set, you could be theist and believe that crystals have supernatural abilities.
Yep. Or you can be theist and believe it doesn't.
Okay.
Then non-mutually exclusive sets.
Yeah.
But how do you make Christians? How do you make Christians understand that?
Confabulation. You created supernatural beings that God does not ascend them.
Wait, say that again, please.
You create supernatural beings to gods, and it's not synonymous. So that's a confabulation.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Gotcha.
John,
that's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking. But I just didn't know if that was right. That's the main reason why I was coming on here. Because
do you accept crystals?
No.
Okay. All right. So
I got a lot of Native American culture in me. I'm
spiritualism.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. But see, I always thought that was of the theism set, but it's not.
You know what's so funny you mentioned that, James? Because I call out non-believers because I'm a non-believer, right? So I police my own. I don't believe in this tribalism bullshit. This is why I was ostracized in the atheist community, because I dare speak out against them and give them facts. Okay, logical facts, right? You saw what I had to deal with Mark. That guy is not very educated when it comes to these topics. Yeah. So you saw what the vitriol was to push back to things, to concepts they don't understand. So it's funny because as a non-believer, I still accept a form of like spiritual things, as far as like the awe and wonder of the universe. I don't mean supernatural, but to me, if you want to say you have a spiritual experience by listening to music, I'm okay with this. I really am. I think that if you could appreciate the aesthetics of the universe, the beauty and wonder of music and how it relates to mathematics and fundamental harmonies and things of that nature, and look at the Fibonacci sequence and things of that and go, yeah, you know what? This is a spiritual stuff. I'm totally okay with that. Because spiritual, it doesn't have to mean supernatural. It just means it invokes some sense of awe and wonder.
Okay.
I mean,
real quick. My brain is starting to hurt with all this knowledge. Okay. I'm going to bring another gentleman back into the discussion that I mentioned earlier, Kent. Okay. Under the set of theism, not theism, his argument is always theism evolution argument.
Yeah,
they're not in the same set.
Well, he's
not in the same set.
Go ahead, John.
Kent's a weird kind of presuppositionalist. His position is anything in the Bible is absolutely correct.
Period.
Therefore, anything that disagrees with the Bible must be wrong.
Correct.
Therefore, I'm going to find an ad hoc rationalization to disregard the current epistemic knowledge that we have around, science.
Yeah, 100%.
For example.
That's correct.
He's a far less sophisticated version of Saiten Bruggencate, and actually far less honest as well, because at least Saiten owns up to the fact that he's a presuppositionalist.
Right, and I
disagree with them both in the same way.
And I get a lot with Psy. I literally just did you watch Psy? I had Psy on the Non Sequitur show a week or two ago. Did you watch that show?
Yeah, I mean, look, I didn't know.
Well, what the hell, man?
Sorry, I'll go back and watch it.
Didn't watch my shit. One sec, James. I promise. Okay. John, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Watch. Yeah, I had Psy 10 on again. Because I happen to like Psy. He actually is funny. The guy is entertaining. I don't agree with him on fuck all, but he's a great guy, actually.
He's kind of funny, too.
He's funny. Yeah, but go ahead, John.
So the only problem I have with I mean, my issues with Psy aren't his personality or anything like that. It's exclusively his presuppositionist position.
Right.
I do have the habit of forgetting myself sometimes and ad homing him and calling him Psy 10 bugger cake, but I can't help that. What I was going to ask you, James, just out of curiosity, is obviously you say you're sort of like a young Earth creationist, so I presume that means your position is Earth 6,000 to 10,000 years old, created in 7 days. I mean, I presume you mean literal days. You're not this subset of young Earth creationists that think that a day could mean thousands, millions. Yeah. But you say you sort of like you're interested in evolution. You look at the process. I mean, do you think you have it in yourself, or do you think you have, do you think you could look at it from the perspective of there is a God, he is all powerful, but given the amount of evidence that exists for things like evolution, it's directed evolution? Is that something, or I'm just curious because you seem
I never thought
of a lot of young Earth
evolution.
creationists. A lot of young Earth creationists that I speak to seem inherently unreasonable.
Direct evolution.
That would be
directed evolution.
Directed evolution. Am I saying it correct?
Yeah, directed evolution, which is a position that like reasons to believe would have that God, the universe. Well, hang on. The universe is billions of years old. That we are involved from lower species, because this is an unquestionable fact. This is reality. But they will argue that God's plan was to direct evolution to the end stage where we are now. So there was make minor changes and little things that God would do to direct the evolutionary stages to get humans to where they are. Now, I have some issues with that, obviously, but at least it makes
massive issues.
Yeah, massive issues. But it still has. What they're doing is, though, John, would you agree? They're at least accepting reality and saying, okay, we need to come up with an explanation for it, rather than young Earth creationists, which deny reality by fiat.
Yeah, so it takes on board a lot more of what we currently know to be true about the universe than young Earth creationism does. Right. But it also keeps what I think are some aspects of the religions that even I will admit potentially have some degree of utility within certain communities. For example, the Christian concept that life is suffering, that we need to overcome it. I mean, nobody could argue that the evolutionary process doesn't inherently have built into it an absolute cake mix of suffering.
Absolutely. Tooth and claw, baby. Tooth and claw, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to, sort of, you're never going to convince somebody who's sort of rightly or wrongly indoctrinated into a particular belief by absolutely clubbing them round the head with textbooks and encyclopedias. You're going to sort of gradually walk them there, and that may be a generational process.
By the way, I'm going to put.
But I also.
Okay, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, the only other thing, the reason 10 years ago, I would never have taken that position. I would have been a militant atheist. And I've sort of, as I've got older and I've reassessed my position over time. I'm also of the position that are any of you guys familiar with Brett Weinstein?
Yes.
Yeah. So, yes. I mean, I disagree with Brett on quite a lot, but one of the things that I do agree with him on, and it's based on evolutionary principles, is that religion is ubiquitous across all cultures. And if it served no evolutionary utility to our species from a social point of view, it wouldn't have existed and persisted in the way that it has. So I do think there are some aspects.
But wasn't he advocating for, and I don't want to talk about the COOF, but wasn't he saying that vaccines...
Oh, no.
Yeah, he was the guy against vaccines, though, right?
No, he's not against vaccines at all.
No,
he has an epistemic... He has an epistemic problem with the stating that the current mRNA technology, which is relatively new, and the
mRNA
it's safe
vaccine.
and effective.
Because he's an evolutionary biologist,
specifically
not a
that one.
geneticist, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
All right, can I ask a question?
I agree.
Yeah. But go ahead. But anyway, so yeah, just to point to James. Go ahead, James.
All right, to John, with the directed evolution, okay?
Yes.
With all these other people I've been watching up to this point, when they talk about evolution, it always comes down with the creationists to macro and micro evolution. Your claim
There's
of
no
directed
distinction.
Evolution, where does that fit?
Well, I disagree. Can I take this one, because I literally did do a debate on this particular topic.
Yeah, of course.
All
Yeah.
right. So,
Okay.
so James, if do you have internet access? Are you on your phone or a computer?
Yeah.
All right. So in the live chat, I put the conversation I had with Dr. Ross the other day, right? Which you might want to check out. It's on the distant starlight problem, with which we explain why Jason's Lau's argument is not great. You might want to check it out.
Okay.
But when it comes to macroevolution, if you go to BioLogos, you ever heard of them? BioLogos is a Christian organization that talks about biology. There's an article on that particular site, and that article was a guy named Wayne Fillmore that put the debate, what his experiences with the debate that he had with me on BioLogos, and it was on macroevolution. And after our debate, he left Young Earth Creationism. He left Young Earth Creationism because he had realized, after I had a debate with him, that what I was telling him about macroevolution was true, because he went and did his own research on it, which is all I ever can expect somebody to do. He left Young Earth Creationism because of this. Go read his story. It's called My Personal Story, or my Personal Experience, or something like that on BioLogos. No, it's called A Debate Changed My Mind. So go to BioLogos, just type in A Debate Changed My Mind, Steve McRae, and read his story on it. And by the way, I am still to this day honored and humbled that he changed his position. He's absolutely a friend of mine. I adore him, and he's so thankful that I got him out of Young Earth Creationism. And the way I went about it, James, was basically explaining that the way the Young Earth Creationists talk about macroevolution, they lie. The difference between macroevolution and microevolution is merely macroevolution deals with speciation, right? Macroevolution is merely a change of allelic frequency, right? But if you have significant change of allelic frequency, then you have an allopatric or parapatric or sympatric speciation event, where you have a new species that is arising that is either incompatible with prior ancestry or with the descendants themselves. That is what we call speciation. That is macroevolution, and it can happen in a single generation in sympatric speciation. And when he went and he read the literature on it, he's like, holy shit, macroevolution does occur. Now, do people can argue whether there's really no need to differentiate between micro and macro? That's a fine argument. You can do that. But in the literature, there is a differentiation between macro and macro, but it's really just, it's really no difference in the long run, like John has explained, or was probably going to explain, because it's still a change of allelic frequency or heritable traits. It's just that one led to a speciation event.
Yeah. Look, you're just talking about the number of generations. Macro and micro seems to be the number of generations between the speciation event.
It usually takes a long time, right? Generally speaking, macroevolution does take a very long time, but it can happen pretty frequently. Matter of fact, I told somebody one time about wheatgrass that can cause a speciation event. I guess they've gone on to talk to people and say that I lied about that it isn't in Wikipedia. It was in Wikipedia. I don't know if they changed it. That might have been true. Wikipedia does update. But if you do look at the polyploidy and whole genome duplications of wheatgrass has been known to speciate in a single generation. So,
yeah, I mean, the easiest way to look at the difference between macro and micro, from my perspective when explaining it, has always been looking at things like ring species. You can have an event, a geological event, or something that, you can have two species, a species of, let's say, mouse that is living in an area on one side of a mountain, and one group of the species starts working its way around the mountain clockwise, and another one starts working its way around the mountain counterclockwise. And it takes hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years for this species to start at the 6 o'clock position and meet at the 12 o'clock position. And because they've encountered different evolutionary, different environmental factors on the way around, by the time they meet at the 12 o'clock position, there have been so many little tiny changes over the generations that they can no longer interbreed, and therefore they're a different species. The point at which that occurred...
That was the Ensatina salamander you're talking about?
Yeah. I mean, a mouse salamander doesn't matter.
That's what I did in my debate.
Sound,
I did it.
Okay.
I talked about the institution of salamander for that very thing you're
quick
describing.
question.
Yes.
Quick question about that, John. Once again, I'm going to go back to Kent Hovind because he uses this in his argument. Okay, and what you're saying is going to blow a big hole in his argument that I've been believing in. So, it's serious to me that what you just said, John. He always uses that rabbit story, the rabbit that went up north. From the southern brown rabbit, they got the same thing that migrated up to the north. And now generations later, if you take that same rabbit from up north down to the south, they can't breed together. Does that make them a different species?
They're called reproductively isolated.
And that makes them a new species?
Yeah. Well, there's about 25 different factors that can actually differentiate between new species. It could be dietary habits. It can be reproductive habits. But generally speaking, to every biologist I've ever talked to, if the descendants at some point after how many generations is no longer able to breed with the ancestral population, in other words, they're reproductively isolated, whether it be what's called post-zygotic or pre-zygotic, that even if they could genetically, let's say they could mate, because obviously there's physical factors in mating, but let's say they could still physically mate.
The correct plumbing. Yeah,
the plumbing still works. And to say even the genes still work, even still the way the gametes will come together will still work, but it's post-zygotically will not be able to come to fruition. It'll actually just not become viable to where it can produce an offspring. Okay.
Or non-gestational.
Non-gestational is the perfect way to put it. So most biologists. This is great. I love this. But yeah, I think most biologists at that point would call that a new species because they're no longer to interbreed, right? And yeah, exactly. Go ahead.
Okay, real quick. On Kent Hovind's argument, he's still saying they're still rabbits. They're still the same species.
No. But rabbits is not a species. Rabbits is a group. He doesn't understand the difference between a group and a clade and phylogenetics.
Yeah, Kent Hovind just says the word kind.
Yeah, he doesn't get that.
Kind.
So let me. Here's the best way to explain to James. You agree. You agree at least in biology we're animals, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, any offspring we have will never stop being animals, correct?
Correct.
We're also eukaryotes. Anything we have going forward is going to be eukaryote or chordata or mammalia. Yeah. Anything that we have now, we continue the line of ancestry. It's called Meyer's Law of Monophyly. So myself, I'm a primate. I am a hominidae or great ape. I am a chordata. I have a spine. Or a notochord. I am mammalia. I have boobs, so to speak. These are all things that will continue. And I'm also a Homo sapiens sapien, which means I'm a human. So any descendant species that come from us will have everything we had in the past, including Homo sapiens sapien. So even to become a new species, they're just going to be called a new name, but all the lineage from the other classifications, the genus Homo, which is genus Homo, it's always going to be Homo. It's always going to be human, right?
Yeah.
It's just going to be a different species of human.
Holy shit.
That's called Meyer's Law. No, that's fine. That's called Meyer's Law of Monophyly, which been explained to Kent many times that a population of dogs will always produce dogs. It cannot produce non-dogs. The evolutionary theory does not say that it would ever produce non-dogs, and he knows this, but he relies on the fact that people that listen to him are idiots. Not you, but he relies on the fact that his constituents are not going to be able to understand biological concepts, and when they do, they butcher them, and so he has to lie to them. Ken is a con man, straight up con man, because when he argues that dogs will still produce dogs to the evolutionists, you go, yeah, no shit.
Yeah, the problem with Kent is not that he doesn't understand. I mean, he obviously doesn't understand to the degree that a biologist would or a physicist would. The arguments have been explained to him so comprehensively on ad nauseum, right. And you can't not understand, at least have a decent surface level understanding of a subject, and at the same time make a comprehensive and committed attempt to manipulate that information to trick other people. It's like when my child says to me, "Oh yeah, Mum said I can have ice cream and ketchup for tea." Well, she has the capacity to have actually said that, but I know that she never would. So my kids are trying to manipulate me, which means they know that they can't have ice cream and ketchup for tea. They know they're doing something wrong, and they acknowledge that in the act of the attempt at manipulation. So we know Kent's being dishonest.
Yes, absolutely.
But what Kent will do and just specifically from the perspective of speciation, he will go, okay, well, point to the fossil that, you know, the immediate generation. So you've got a rabbit that gives birth to another creature that is no longer a rabbit, is morphologically different and incapable of breeding with its parent. Now, obviously, we know there are good reasons not to breed with your parents from a genetic point of view, specifically in
The Whitaker family.
Well, yeah, exactly. But my point is that if you pick, the speciation is, in most circumstances, as Steve has pointed out, is something that takes place over time. So just as a for instance, let's say you get a speciation event every 100 generations. It's not just you got genetically dissimilar 99 times, then all of a sudden you get something that's genetically totally different. Genetically similar, and then all of a sudden something that's genetically dissimilar. You get a combination of tiny changes over time. So if you pick one generation within a lineage of 1,000 generations, then in 50 generations above that and 50 generations below that, they're going to be able to interbreed. If you then move 25 generations down the line, you're going to have another 50 generations in front of that and another 50 generations below that where they're going to be able to breed, and beyond that point they're not. We're a continuous string of genetic change that has its origination point at abiogenesis.
That's what happened with the instantaneous salamander. That's exactly what happened.
We're all related. And what Kent wants is you to point at two specific generations. You can't point at two specific generations outside of some massive mutation event that, in most circumstances, is
rare,
no
but
longer conducive to life. Or it can happen.
Very
but
rare,
the
but
vast majority of circumstances, they're either infertile or they in principle can't survive. They have very short lives and die before breeding.
Right.
So you need to look at it from the perspective of hundreds of thousands, millions of generations, and you pick a point like when we find a fossil, the reason we dedicate that a specific species is just because we happen to find that fossil that was that generation at the point that it died. If you look at that, you can have something that is the actual literal genetic ancestor of that creature 2 million years later, and it would be a different species. They're great grandfather, but different species.
John, we have pointed Kent at speciation events that happened in our time, and he just says his complaint says we haven't found all of the missing links.
But there is no missing links.
Yeah,
there's no
I know.
thing.
Yeah, I mean, the missing link is something that was coined by he was a Pierre Palm broker. He was I forget what his name was, what his field of study was. He was like an anthropologist or some derivation thereof. The missing link is, the missing link is every individual of every species that has ever existed between two arbitrary points that Kent Hovind picks. You can't find them all. It's fucking impossible.
It was Alexander Pope in the 18th century. That's looked.
Was it?
Yeah. I didn't remember.
Quick question, John.
No. Pierre Palm broker was the broker divide. Sorry, which is similar but slightly different.
Yeah, I didn't remember either where it came from because it wasn't the 8. It goes back quite a way. But here's James. What he's saying is, if you look up the instantaneous salamander, which I put in the live chat, there's a ring. It was called a ring speciation, or allopatric speciation, which you have this kind of geological formation, and around that geological formation, let's start at the north. So you have a population of salamanders that lives on the north face of that geological formation, like a mountain.
Sorry to interrupt, Steve. I'm going to have to mute myself for a couple of minutes. I just need to run one of my kids to school, but I'm interested in the conversation, so I'll be back. All right.
Sure.
Sorry, carry on.
So if the population exists on the north face, and all of a sudden you have these populations that are going around the base of the mountain or to the top of the mountain or wherever, they're going to experience different what's called selective pressures. Let's say it's more wet to the north. It may be more hotter to the south, right? There's going to be different things that they're going to have to acclimate to. So the things that help them phenotypically to acclimate, or actually, the word is actually adapt, right? Organisms acclimate, populations adapt. So they're going to have to adapt to the new selective pressures. So you might have these two different populations that go, let's say, to the east and go to the west, and they have these many generations. And so when they come back to the south side, this is why it's called a ring. They come back to the south side. When they meet, they won't be able to interbreed any longer because the selective pressures they've had on the east and west side of the geological formation have been so different, they're no longer biologically reproductively compatible. They will not be able to produce offspring. And they become different species. And also depends on what they're eating, what their predatory, things, if they have different predations. So if you look at the Ensatina salamander, you'll see, I think it's 12 or 13 distinct individual species that came from one parent population. They're all salamanders, but they're different species because they speciated. That's back revolution.
Speciated. Okay. So now, with going along the same line, what we're talking about, me being a theist, young Earth creation theist, with my stance, currently on evolution, I need to see a speciation event in human or Homo sapiens, right?
Well, the last speciation event. What I'm saying? See, the last speciation event. Okay, so there used to be something called Cro-Mag. Cro-Mag, they just realized was just a modern human. They don't really differentiate anymore. Cro-Mag is an antiquated term. But before they had what's called Homo habilis, Homo heidelbergensis. They had Dosivians. They also had Homo erectus before that. And they also had, before that, what's called Australopithecus. Australopithecus africanus was also colloquially known as Lucy, which was found. Where was Lucy found? I don't remember. But the Australopithecus is a different group, right? Homo is one group. Australopithecus is a different group. They all evolved from a common ancestor, but all the species that evolved on the Homo path, they're all different species of humans. Matter of fact, Homo neanderthalis, last one died out. I mean, I don't know how many tens of thousands of years ago, but we still have centers in our DNA. Some people have up to like 2 or 3% DNA from Homo neanderthalis, even though that's an extinct species. There was some interbreeding between humans, Homo sapiens sapiens, and Homo neanderthalis at one time when they started to diverge, because they hadn't diverged sufficiently genetically to where they couldn't still mate and reproduce. But after some time, Homo sapiens went on to reproduce, and look what happened to Homo neanderthalis. They went extinct. They weren't able to adapt. Right?
Yeah.
So that was the last really speciation event of humans. But if you go look at the primate tree, and I wish I would have prepared for this, I hadn't. But if you go look at like the human origins from the Smithsonian Institute, they show a really good tree of how that came about. And what Kent would argue is, that's just lines on paper. But he doesn't tell his audience that a lot of scientific data went into making those lines on paper. To make those images, it's just a very, very simplistic view of what the data shows. But Kent tries to argue it as, here's an evolutionist. They just make some kind of pictures and diagrams and lines, and that's their evidence. No, the evidence is all the academic body of work that went into making those lines and diagrams. And he doesn't refute any of them. Why? Because, one, he's wrong, and two, he can't. He doesn't have the skill set to even attempt to. Just like the guy that came on earlier. Mark doesn't have the skill set to refute me. Now, he could argue, well, Steve, you're not qualified. No, but my papers are correct. My work is correct. If experts are saying, yeah, Steve's got a clue, Steve's not ignorant, Steve's not incompetent in the basics of these topics, what he says is correct, why would you not? Why would there be an argument then? At that point, you should be like, if Steve's putting out correct information, maybe I go learn something. Like in mathematics, the whole 0.99 repeating was 1. I still got people that argue that, even though not a single mathematician would say that it's wrong. I don't get it. It's an objective fact. If you're really to put aside objective facts for your beliefs, like younger creationists generally do, you might want to reevaluate your belief system. And I'm not saying you personally, but in general, maybe your belief system needs some revision. And you seem like a really intelligent guy, James. It sounds like you really want to have a revision in your epistemological framework. And I respect that. Yeah. That's a virtue it's actually called virtue epistemology. That's virtuous.
All right. Flame, I got a question for you.
Shoot.
All right. You're a theist, right?
Affirmative.
You believe in God, right?
So it's complicated. I believe Yahweh, but I believe he's a scammer. He's not as powerful as he says he is. I'm a polytheist, so I believe in more than one God. The Bible references more God, and they're called idols. But yeah, I'm I'm a
Flavius likes to. He wants to make sure he gets something wrong. He just accepts them all. Yeah, coming on a basis kind of stuff.
Well, I'm like a singular God theist myself. All right, but getting back to the set, okay? This is where my brain is like does not compute. How can I be a theist and not believe in the young Earth creation theory?
Oh, that's a great question.
It's simple. You just need to believe in a God to be a theist. It's no requirement to believe in the younger creation theory.
Yeah, theist is just somebody who believes there's a God. That's it. That's it. Period. That's it. The only qualification in philosophy to be a theist is that you believe there's a being that exists that you would call a God that created the universe or sustains the universe, which all things contingent come from.
No, you don't have to believe they created or sustained the universe. Just believe in God.
Well, I mean, you can get to the polytheistic nature. I mean, you go into. I get a little more specific, and for you or Flame, I'd get a little more specific. But in general, it's just somebody who believes there's a supernatural being that's some kind of deity.
Yeah, I mean, most deistic definitions seem to include the concept of a prime mover, something that
first cause
is necessary. First cause, something that was necessary and contingent for us to be in existence right now, having this conversation. They started the domino rolling of all of the events. It's as not loaded down. It's so unbelievably light of dogma and cultural history. It's just the again, like we were talking about before, the lowest possible common denominator of what.
But John, that's not a silly argument. But James,
no, it's not.
Are you familiar with Thomas Aquinas' 5 ways? Now, a lot of it is no longer that applicable because we do understand things a lot better than what we did in the 17th, 18th, 16th, 17th century, whatever it was. We understand a lot of things better than Thomas Aquinas, but he was a brilliant thinker, and he does make one good point in this 5 ways, and that goes to the prime mover or first cause. Motion requires something to make something in motion. Newton knew this, right? Inertia, things stay in motion and that's acted upon. Things either remain stationary or change in motion when acted upon by outside exerted force. This is something that Newton found out, right, in physics. So Aquinas knew something like that, too. And he said, okay, if there's motion, what was the first thing that started the motion? What was the first cause of motion? And as John pointed out, the atheists back then would argue that was God. It's called the prime mover. It's not and you got to remember back then, this was cutting edge stuff. This was serious philosophy, and it's still to this day a very difficult question to try to answer from a non-theist point of view. And I think a lot of atheists hand wave away the foundational arguments that John is talking about because they're not competent enough to dive into those types of arguments. I've talked to atheists, James, that never heard of things like the logical problem of evil or the evidential problem of evil or divine hiddenness. They just have never heard these things. They don't even know what an atheist philosopher even is. That's discouraging to a non-believer.
So you can have a prime mover and it not be God. Like Ozian's book, I finished it today. Yes, that singularity at the beginning of the universe as a prime mover, but he doesn't say it's a God.
But how would a singularity, which is a mathematical construct? Singularity is actually a mathematical construct.
Yeah, it is a mathematical construct. That's why we knock it down. It's
but how does it produce motion?
Got the math right.
But how does it produce motion? Right? Things like, for example, we have
orbital. We have no idea. We have no idea how it produces motion. Exactly. The math breaks down. It's ridiculous.
Math breaks down. That's why in singularity, the math literally does break down. Like literally breaks down. It does not work.
Yeah, you shouldn't make that an object. It's not an object. It's a whole.
But that doesn't necessitate a God. But the theist would argue, but it's a possible explanation, and I agree with them. God is a possible explanation for this. It's not the conclusion that I'm convinced of, but it is a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most important things in science, philosophy, even theology up to a point, the most important thing, probably one of the most important thing that anybody could ever say is, you know what? I don't know, but I'm going to try and find out.
Absolutely.
And the next step to that is, because I don't know, but I'm going to try and find out, I'm going to put this name in here as a placeholder, and I'm going to attach as little by way of attributes to that name and placeholder as I can possibly get away with.
That's what they call God.
So, for example, Yeah, and that's this hole, this god of the gaps that you end up with people who they don't like the I don't know, so they insert what they claim to be knowledge, or if they're more honest, just a belief. I mean, it amazes me the number of people that don't have an appreciation of the difference between knowledge and belief. Most people think that knowledge comes first and belief comes from that.
Which makes no
but
sense.
Actually, what you need, which makes no sense, you need a belief first, because knowledge has an epistemological standard to it. Just as the most basic example of it, you could say, okay, I believe that if I climb to the top of that clock tower and drop this brick off of it, that brick will fall to the ground. You can have a rational reason for believing that, but until you actually test it, you don't know that that's the case. So the belief in knowledge comes prior to the knowledge. And then once you show somebody your test, that test can then preempt a belief.
So let me ask you this, John. Let me ask you this, because most epistemologists subscribe to justified true belief or JTB+. Okay. Now there are actually knowledge first theories, but they're semantic or pragmatic, like Tarski's semantic theories. Very complicated stuff. But generally speaking, if you go to any epistemology, you say is knowledge a subset of belief, they're going to tell you yes. I mean, it's just ubiquitous. But what do you do when you talk to somebody who has no reading? You look at my citation list. I've read every paper that I put on my citation list. Now, if you go to somebody and they say, well, that's stupid. Knowledge isn't a subset of belief. That's dumb. And yet you give them academic citations and you explain to them justified true belief, which is 3 criteria, James. There's 3 criteria for knowledge. 1, the proposition has to be true. 2, you have to believe the proposition. And 3, you have to be justified to believe the proposition. 3 is the hardest, okay? That's the hardest one to really kind of get your head around. And then there's what's called JTP+, when you add in certain things dealing with what's called truth tracking conditions for possible worlds. But this is ubiquitous. This is epistemology. Most epistemologists I know will tell you that knowledge is a subset of belief. So when you're dealing with, like John said, where people go, well, you have to know something before you believe it. And then I ask them, what are you basing this on? I get bumpkiss. I don't get any peer review paper. I don't get any, but they literally know nothing about the topic. That's what you watched earlier.
Wait,
you know,
I can't believe I didn't believe existed. It's simple, very easy to explain.
Yeah, but you don't even, I mean, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, pretty much. I had to believe it exists before I can go ahead and find it and install it.
Well, okay, like I had an argument with that. I told somebody, John, I told him the other day, I was like, look, in order to try to reason in the universe, to actually observe the universe, to draw inference, to make a coherent model of the universe, a scientific theory that has accurate predictions and describes observation, you first have to make a very basal assumption. And the first basal assumption in science is there's something there to observe. That the universes exist is a presupposition in science. Nothing wrong with that. But they don't understand what's called premise circularity. They don't understand that you have to assume there's something there. There's a there to even observe. That's a presupposition.
Yeah, I mean, you can round that back on yourself and go, okay, you can. Unfortunately, you can run into these weird sort of solipsistic loopholes and tangents of, am I the only thing that exists?
Right, but that's not
sort of. But
then you're into hard solipsism.
You are into hard solipsism, and as far as I'm concerned, if a conversation retracts back that far, then
you're done.
You're done, because you're still dealing with somebody who isn't prepared to engage with you. They're just slightly more sophisticated than Mark was.
Yeah, well, literally, I'd be talking to myself here. You know,
when I see that in debates, I tell them they're arguing tit for tat.
Well, Mark is not competent to talk about these subjects, and he could argue, well, you don't have a degree, Steve. But again, I talk about these subjects with people that are experts in the field for 10 years.
Steve, my name in the live chat is Axel84 because I'm my surname is Foley, and when I was at university, because of the film. Yeah, exactly. So they thought that a white Irishman with Jewish and Hispanic ancestry wasn't culturally insensitive to give me the name of a black character from a 1980s
I remember I watched Beverly Hills Cop. Yeah, what was it? That was Axel F. I'm sorry, because Axel Foley was Eddie Murphy, but the song Remember Axel F by Herbie Hancock?
But I did say.
So
if you look back in the live chat.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you look back in the live chat, I think about halfway through the conversation, I just put argument from authority incoming.
Yeah.
Well,
again, I mean, I cannot. This is what I'm saying. He makes atheists look ignorant because he doesn't even know what he doesn't even know, and when you tell a person that you're going to argue against their, positions, you better know what their positions are. Clearly, he didn't understand my positions, and certainly wasn't competent enough to understand basic things like set theory. And so it's very disconcerting when you have atheists out there making non-believers look foolish to theists. No offense to you two in here, but I don't like looking like an inept, baboon to theists. I mean, it's tribalism, I guess, right? So I have spent 10 years of my life helping atheists with their arguments.
Mm.
And I've been vilified for that by atheists because I am too precise. Okay.
So
I don't want to dig on Mark too much, but the big problem, what he was doing when you would ask him a question, a very simple yes/no question. Would you consider a newborn baby to be an atheist? That's a yes, that's a no, and then he can follow that up with a qualification.
Absolutely.
But instead, he asked you how many cylinders does a Kawasaki motorbike engine have?
It's obfuscating.
I'm like, well, that's no different than Kent Hovind going
100%. Same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He obfuscates, and this is a property or attribute of new atheists that I see a lot. New atheist TM, that they do that. They literally argue like flat earthers. My audience will tell you. I think most of them agree. He argued like a flat earther. I don't see any difference.
Yeah. Anyways, I have a fear for solipsism. I have a fear for solipsism real quick. Pretty much, I would challenge a solipsist to either ignite or suppress this fire remotely. If they have control over the universe, they should be able to control my flame in the world, my will at any time, no matter what distance I'm at.
Well, first of all, it's so funny with solipsism. You know things I don't know. So if wouldn't I know them? Right? Or just
Yeah, you wouldn't know them.
So
you would access to all the things I know if you were solipsism and you were the root.
Yeah, can I go over the 10 things that I put as properties or attributes of New Atheist TM? I didn't have it earlier, but I put it up on the screen now. Can I go over them with you guys?
Sure.
All right. I'm not going to screen share the internal, but I'll just tell you what they are on the outside. I can see them when I'm showing. So, New Atheist TM, I see all have very common argumentative styles. Here you go. Number 1, argumentium ad meme. Okay, Mark didn't do that, but if you go to the Facebook groups, we're just going to call them New Atheist. I'm going to forget the TM right now, but New Atheists love to argue by meme. Here's a meme. Here's Hitchens. Here's Dawkins. They do not substantively rebut your arguments. They just say, here's a meme. Now, some of them are pretty funny. I'm not going to lie. Some of them actually might even be on point, but most of their memes are just very wrong, philosophically speaking. Do you guys notice this?
Yeah, that's why I'm going to start making Paul Compall cartoons. I even have Kitra open right now so I can counter their memes with more memes.
Yeah, I'll give you an example of a meme I like. The one with Jesus knocking on the door, and he says, knock, knock. Who is it? Jesus, let me in. I need to save you. Save me from what? Save you from if you don't let me in. I like that one. That one actually makes sense, right? But most of the memes are pretty stupid. And so argumenting by meme. Number 2, they fail to understand simple arguments, but argue you're wrong by fiat. I think that Mark did that.
That was demonstrated today for like a couple hours.
Yeah. Do you guys? Again, I'm asking my audience as well. So go through these to say yes or no. Argumentative ad meme, put 1 yes, 2 no, and let me know in the audience what you think. So you guys agree. Now, again, Mark didn't do argumentative ad meme, but this is towards New Atheists in general. 3, do not understand very simple logic.
You got 3 in spades.
Yeah, I find very few New Atheist TMs can understand basic logic. Mark was a very good indicator of that. Number 4, do not understand very simple epistemology. John, would you agree with that?
Sorry, I'm driving, so I'm miking on and off. But yeah, I mean, really, the most fundamental basics of epistemology, he seemed to not have a grasp of. I couldn't quite wrap my head around somebody engaging in a public debate with a person and not understanding sort of like sets that incorporate the lowest common denominator.
Again, this
that just blew my mind.
But it's not. I know you're using the term generally speaking.
Well, yeah, okay.
Discussion.
I'm
Discussion.
I'm not even like, I don't even want to call it a discussion or a dialectic, because that
definitely was not a dialectic. Because dialectic, a synthesis and a dialectic. Oh, don't go all Hegelian on me, okay? Okay. But I would. I don't like it. I can't read Hegel. But whatever. But here's the funniest thing. The only reason why I don't call these things are debates is because I actually do formal debates, and I can name you each person I've debated, and I've never lost a debate, and I take that very seriously. I mean, the only one that you may call a tie was the one I did with Stated Clearly on if DNA is a code, because there really was no objective fact of the matter to be had. That was very subjective, but I think I presented a hell of an argument that if it was rated as a debate, I would win on the merits of the debate. But I debated one guy, and this is, I can't demonstrate this because the video is no longer up, but I'm not even joking. I debated one guy on if ATP synthase was a turbine, and it was so brutal because I had 2 PowerPoint presentations that we got to the Q&A part of the debate. He left, and I mean, he's like, I recused myself. I'm done.
Owned.
Yeah, it was owned. It was so my first debate, Wayne Fillmore changed his position and left Younger Creationism. My second one left during the Q&A because he was just getting his ass beat. I'm pretty good at debating. Okay. Number 5. Insist dogmatically that they are correct regardless of any and all evidence to the contrary, ipse dixit.
Yep.
That was a yep. Number 6. Deny logic when it does not suit their position.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, that's pretty much it.
We saw that tonight. He denied axiomatic set theory. In order to support his position, he had to deny what John was trying to explain about axiomatic set. Number 7, quote the Four Horsemen or American Atheist over peer review academic citations and or journals and think that it's sufficient evidence for a philosophical claim. Now, he didn't do that tonight, but I have had people tell me, well, American Atheist says this, and they say, why don't you contact them? And I literally had Pam Whistle, the editor-in-chief, on my show multiple times, telling me, hey, if anybody uses American Atheist as a citation for philosophy, tell them to stop. We are a political organization, not a philosophical one. So,
I have a question about number 7. So, if you cite Matt Dillahunty or Aaron Raw, would you qualify for number 7?
Yeah, but here's the thing. I don't mind citations of people that are not experts. Again, I'm not an expert, but people do use my arguments and people do cite me, colloquially speaking. But the thing is that's all they have. They never use any peer review. Everything I have is literally everything I almost have is peer review, right? And I've read each paper numerous times sometimes. You never do see them cite that, and when they do, the only one they generally cite is Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and they get it wrong because they look at one specific or 2 paragraphs of it, not understanding that Dr. Draper from Purdue is actually arguing against the very thing that they're saying because they don't read the rest of it. Remember, you remember the book On Origin of Species by Darwin? Right? Yeah. Darwin, in part of Origin of Species, which I did read, but I did read this in high school. So, but Darwin argued about the evolution of the eye, and he started off something along the lines of, how impossible it seems the evolution of the eye is. I mean, he's arguing, hey, look, this is impossible to do this way. And then he goes on to explain why it's not impossible teleologically using evolution. But creationists would take that quote from him and say, look, even Darwin argued that it's, impossible for the evolution of the eye, right?
I think that's probably one of the most quote-mined pieces
you know
of
what I'm
text
talking about then, right?
In the history
it really
of quoting things, yeah.
So you know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's exactly what they did. They said, look, Darwin says it's even fantastical or something. But then they don't realize that Darwin goes on to explain it. And that's what happens with Draper.
Or the finches on the islands.
The what?
Or the finches on the island.
Or the finches,
and stuff.
The Galapagos and island and the finches, which is adaptive radiation. They're like, oh, well, some of these were phenotypic expressions had reverted back or whatever. Again, they're not understanding, 1, adaptive radiation, 2, things could change under selective pressures again, and 3, there are epigenetic factors that will go on for a certain amount of generations, but not be permanent fixated in the population because they're not nucleotide changes. So,
all right, quick question about the finches, though.
Yeah.
Not reading his work about the finches, hearing people talk, either for or against what he said about the finches. Are they, correct me, if I'm using the wrong term, of the same kind because they are mainly can they still breed together?
Yeah, but see, what they were arguing is because they were on different parts of the island that they would their beaks would change in order to be able to open up seeds differently.
I understand that.
Yeah, that's what we would expect. Right? Evolution says that species adapt to their environment to survive. And so these were phenotypical changes, but they were changes because of genetic changes. Phenotype is dependent upon genotype.
And that goes back to the amount of melanin that humans have in their bodies. Could that be a similar correlation to the beak?
Melatonin came from the fact that certain people were exposed to different amounts of ultraviolet light.
But still, with the changes of the beaks, they're still finches. They just got different beaks.
Yeah.
Me and Flame were both humans, but
But it shows that it shows it's changed. But see, here's the thing. Again, if you go back, millions of years, the population was just some kind of primate. Speciation for humans had not developed yet, but we're still primates.
Okay, now me as a young Earth creationist, I don't believe we came from monkeys argument.
We're still monkeys, though. We are monkeys. We did evolve from monkeys, by the way. Even the atheists get that wrong, dude. Atheists are like, oh, we didn't evolve from monkeys. I'm like, oh, yeah, actually, cladistically, monophyletically, yes, we did. But
yeah, so monkeys are our they're our cousins, but they're not. We're not a direct ancestor of them.
I disagree.
They're a cousin, so we share an ancestor.
No, I disagree. We are. So hang on. Let me try to explain this, and then John could say otherwise. Monkey is a subset of ape because one, they're groups, but we are we are Cercopithecida, which means we are old world monkeys. Old world monkeys is a clade, and so monophyletically and cladistically we are part of Cercopithecida, which means we are cladistically monkeys. Now, if you want to go paraphyletically or even polyphyletically, sure, the same thing.
Yeah.
We're not Cercopithecida either. But
I should rephrase that. We are from the same ancestor, but that ancestor was a monkey. So, yeah, I mean, you cladistically, you can, technically we're monkeyfish.
Yeah, but exactly, and that's what I was saying. Even though if you want to go monophyletically, we are Cercopitheci, we are low-fin fish. But what happened was they took tetrapods out of that, right? So tetrapods, that's why we're a paraphyletic clade. We're not a monophyletic clade. So when they say, are you fish? The technical answer is cladistically, yes. Phylogenetically, no. Because they took tetrapods out of that. So it's hard. This is where Mark would be great at. Like, what do you mean? The answer is not a simple answer. Are we fish? Because there are two different things. To me, when somebody asks, are you a fish? I'm going to go the phylogenetic route. No, we're not fish, right? Because what they mean by that is, things that swim in the ocean kind of stuff. And so there's a connotation there. But if somebody says, are we descended from a type of fish or something of that nature, from some kind of thing that was a Cercopitheci, I would have to say yes, right? But let me finish this real quick so we can get through these. Number 8, I love this one. This is my favorite. Have pretty much never read a philosophical paper in their lives. New Atheist Tim, he said he read Flew when he was 18, but or read, Draper, but you ask them what papers they've read, nothing. Half of them will say there's no papers on atheism, which makes me cringe. It makes me weep. So you guys see that often with this type of person?
So I have a problem. Number 8, the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy never defines philosophy in it, so I can't know for certain if I ever read a philosophical.
Well, that's one of the exceptions, right? I mean, and most of them have never read any of them, but the ones that have will only cite SEP, and the only reason they cite SEP, I believe this. The only reason most atheists cite SCP is because of myself and a few handful of people have promoted SCP over the years. If we never promoted SCP, I don't think they would ever heard of it. But that's maybe I'm egotist on that, but whatever.
It's interesting. I mean, I don't even necessarily think that you need to have read philosophical papers. I mean, I've had conversations with people who have never read any, by their own admission, have never read any sort of philosophical literature in their life, but just by virtue of the modern world that we live in and the amount of information that we're directly and indirectly exposed to, they have come to the same conclusions. Again, very early stage philosophical conclusions that that philosophers have come to essentially on their own.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that.
You know, and then you'll have a conversation with that person who go, oh, that's this, and they'll go, oh, is that what it's called? Do you know?
But here's the thing, John.
I mean, that happens loads.
Sure, absolutely. But those are not the ones going around telling people that are giving these arguments that are wrong, right? These are all types of people. Every one of these have told me that these new atheist TMs have told me like I'm wrong on my arguments, but they've never read a paper on it. Right? That's my point, right? So yeah, you're right. Absolutely, it's not a requirement, right? But when you have a new atheist TM telling me that my arguments are wrong, but they've never read a paper on it, I get discouraged. You know? Yeah.
No. And you know, you'd be perfectly justified in becoming discouraged at that point.
All right. How about this one?
Especially if their behavior is
like Marx.
The epitome of obtuse.
So number 9. Use mute, boot, admin, block, ghosting when shown to be wrong. I noticed a lot, and I tweeted this out once. Whenever I show somebody to be wrong objectively,
just once.
Just once. I show them the wrong. They'll ghost me, or they'll block me, or they'll boot me, and I'm like, wait a minute though. This is like, you know, I can tell somebody, well, X equals X. You're wrong. Bye. Okay.
We have a term for this. We call this Reddit atheism.
What do you call it? Reddit atheism?
Yes, Reddit atheism.
I can see that. I've heard that before. And that's right.
Reddit, a collection of genetic dead ends never did a more comprehensively compiled, never did exist.
Right? Anastrator makes a good point. Fish is a group, by the way. Fish is not the clade, right? Fish has no cladistic or phylogenetic meaning because fish is literally just a colloquial group. Same with monkeys, by the way, right? And so he points out fish has no cladistic or phylogenetic meaning. That is correct. Circopithidea is a clade, though. Or Sarcopterygi is a phylogenetic group. It is colloquial term for scaly things that swim. Yeah, exactly. Again, when people say the word fish and they ask you, are you fish? I have to say no. But since Sarcopterygi was actually lobe-finned fish, then monophyletically we would. So again, it really just makes that in that particular case, it's fair to ask, what do you mean by that? If you read Neil and I know Annis Fried has read Neil Schubin's book, you're discovering your inner fish. He'll make that argument, right? And that's a great book, James. I highly recommend Neil Shubin, Your Inner Fish. He talks about a story where, based upon our understanding of evolution, there should be a creature that existed that had certain phylogenetic traits or phenotypical traits, and that had certain types of anatomical characteristics. And based upon geographical location or geobiology, we should be able to find out what strata they were in and what part of the world. And so what they did was they said, okay, here's what we're looking for. We're looking for this property of fish. And they went, and I think it was outside off of Nova Scotia. It wasn't in Nova Scotia, somewhere near around Nova Scotia. And I don't remember the exact city. And Freda probably knows because he knows everything. He's my fact checker. But they went and they found exactly what they were looking for, and that was called Tiktaalik. Tiktaalik was actually discovered.
I was about to say, are you referring to Tiktaalik? Yeah.
Yes, Tiktaalik was discovered by prediction. That they predicted if this evolution is true, we should, maybe not by necessity, but we might be able to find something that has these characteristics in this location. And they went, and guess what? They found it. That doesn't happen in the creationist model. Matter of fact, there's an organism. Good.
I was just going to say that prediction as well is absolutely outstanding.
One of the greatest predictions
when you go
made.
back and honestly, it's ridiculous. They predicted the core aspects of the morphology of it. They predicted, what strata
exactly.
they
strata.
They would find it in. They predicted based on the strata and the number of fossils from the particular aeon that they thought they were looking in. They predicted roughly which continent I think it was even which subpart of the continent they would find it on. I mean, it is ridiculous.
Younger creationists can't do that.
The notion that was a lucky guess is ridiculous.
Silly,
yeah.
Matter of fact, I don't know if John, you may not even know this, but there's a company called Zion Oil and Gas, and this company was the company that based on its predictions on where to drill for oil. So you do know
had a creationist subset that almost immediately went out of business because they found fuck all. One.
Exactly. So let me tell James. So James, there's this company. They still exist, but they went to a more they went to an old Earth model. Go figure, right? They actually had to use old Earth stuff, but from what I understand, but they at one time were using younger creationist beliefs to try to drill oil. They built 3 dry wells, and their stock went down to under $1. To under $1. It was pennies on the dollar because they weren't producing anything. They were called Zion Oil and Gas, but they were not producing oil and gas. And it costs money to drill a dry well. And then they went, oh crap, maybe we have to use evolution or, what we call old Earth modeling, a deep time stuff. And I don't know if they ever did find any oil, but I mean, it's like it wasn't working. I can tell you right now, I bet you they're still around $1 or $2. I don't think I haven't looked in Asia, but I'm looking at this Zion gas and oil stock, if they're even still around. Let's see what they're at. Don't cheat. Okay, guess what they're at. You guys want to make a guess?
I'm going to guess $1.30.
82 cents. No. I'm sorry. Not $0.028. So 8 cents. That's 8 cents. 8.2 cents.
Oh my God!
Well, careful broadcasting that, Steve, because if Kent Hovind gets hold of that, he'll say, "Look, see, now they're using evolutionary principles to decide where to drill their values even less."
right. Yeah. Hi, number 10. This is my favorite because this happens to be frequently. Because you know how many times they've gone after me personally. Oh, and they love tone placing me because I could be an asshole on Facebook. I own this. Okay, I do. Hey, look, Res Rhetoric is an asshole to Flat Earther. He owns it. Okay, but he knows what he's talking about.
I love Res Rhetoric.
Yeah, he knows what he's talking about.
Yes, sir.
And so when people say, well, Steve, you could be a real asshole on Facebook. Okay, fine. But I'm dealing with people that have all these properties, these attributes that are intransient. They're not going to be able to understand the material, nor do they want to. And when you're that intractable, you're not going to be able to digest what I have to tell them, right? And so they resort to personal attacks, like Mark did. Oh, well, you're not qualified, but that's irrelevant. My argument stands or falls on its merit. So the number 10 is attack a person's character to try to diminish their argument when they can't show the person's argument to be wrong, mostly because they don't understand it, or 2, they have no evidence to support the position. That's what happened tonight. He's a perfect example. Instead of actually coming up with evidence against my arguments that he didn't read, or citations or anything like that, or actually study the material, he decided to attack my character by saying I lack the necessary qualifications, even though there's not a single expert out there that says, Steve, you're practically wrong on any of this. If an expert says, hey, Steve, I think you made a mistake, I will fix it. And Fried is not an expert, but he's my fact checker. When he says you made a mistake factually, we'll address it. Okay, and usually I'm just being, it's so funny, people say, well, you're talking over people's heads a lot of times in this stuff. And I dumb it down, and then Fried would go like, yeah, but you're wrong on that. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, but I'm trying to make it very simple, right? So you can't win. You can't win.
Can I just interject something very, very quickly, just around the argument, just around the argument from authority?
Yes, please.
It can sound, Steve, it can sound when you say, oh, this person agrees with me, that person agrees with me, that you are making an argument from authority in the same way as Mark was.
Can I do a rebuttal on that?
Well, no, I was probably going to do a rebuttal for you, because what I was going to say is that there's a fundamental difference between what you're doing and what Mark was doing. Mark was saying your argument is invalid because you are not an expert. Steve was saying my argument is valid because this expert agrees with me, and here's the reason for why they agree with me that you can go and check yourself.
No, I wouldn't even argue that. I would say it this way, because that could be borderline argument from authority. First of all, an argument authority is not
fallacious.
Well, it's not necessarily fallacious, right? It's called argumentum ad verecundium, and it's really only fallacious in 3 situations, mostly. 1, the expert is not an expert is not an expert. They're not an expert in the domain of discourse, or they haven't evaluated the argument, right? Those would be all fallacious use of argumentum ad authority. When I don't say I'm right because authorities agree with me. What I say is my work has been looked at, and they haven't found any errors, right? And so I would say that I would argue my arguments are correct, not because authorities have checked them, but because to the date they still haven't found any errors with them. Look, here's the thing. I argue they're correct, right? And if I say authority agrees with me, it's just saying that is substantiating that there isn't any errors in my reasoning or anything. Now, if somebody says there's an error, here you go, then I'll change that. But I can't say that I'm right because an expert agrees with me. What I can say is I believe that I'm right. Here's the evidence, and it has been substantiated by experts. There's a big difference there, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's sort of peer review.
I got a couple of questions, Steve.
Yes.
Sorry for cutting you off, John. What was the name of this list again?
These are my new atheist traits that I called it. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all this in my blog. I have a couple of domains. One of my domains is called the Great Debate Community, and I have a blog on that called 3 a.m. Philosophy. I'm just going to just throw these up. There's a link the next day or two. I'm off Friday. I'll throw up the new atheist traits, and I'll throw up the 10 things that I argue are why we shouldn't use atheism in the negative. And by the way, let me tell my audience this. This goes back again all the way to Plato about why we don't define things in the negative. This is how long this has been going on, why people have been arguing against this. And one of the big things that I was going to talk about with Mark, but he was incompetent enough to do so, is axiological value. It has been established for centuries that positive affirmations of propositions are much more informative than negative. This is well established in philosophy. And it's a simple way to explain this. If I say to you, I'm a duck, that tells you something. Tells you what I am. If I say I'm not a duck, that doesn't tell you a lot of things. It doesn't really give information. Or if the canonical thing is, if you say Paris is the capital of France, that's informative, right? But if I say Moscow is not the capital of France, that doesn't tell you much. It doesn't tell you what the capital of France is, right? So positive statements are always going to be more informative, axiologically, have value than negative statements. And I'm going to do a whole show one day on negations, because negations are complicated, believe it or not. But but here's, I go by what is it? Frege negations, and I go by basically it is not the case. That's the way I best phrase for negator. But there's ways that the negation can be complicated on the predication of a word, right? Because if I say something like snow is not, if snow isn't white, is not quite the same as saying snow is not white. They're not exactly the same thing, believe it or not.
Yeah, I mean, and this is one of the most basic things that people need to understand when they're dealing with things like logical syllogisms. Because, I mean, there's a difference between exclusionary criteria, founding a proposition like a proposition being founded as a negative, like the capital of France is not Paris, and then you get people who use these ways of formulating arguments arse about face. And I also find that the people that do that are almost always the same sort of person who will go, you can't prove a negative.
Yeah, which we know we can.
What the fuck?
I mean, proof by possibility is proving a negative, or modus tollens is even proving a negative. And by the way, I hate John because he's British, and so everything he sounds smart. It doesn't matter what the hell he says. He's got a leg up just because he's British. I don't like that.
I'm not affected by that. I'm not affected by red coat.
It affects me. It affects me dearly, because he could read a phone book and be going, yeah, that's fascinating. I want to learn more. It's a property of the Brits,
Hey, Steve.
Some elocution. It needs some elocution.
I love your elocution. I really do. Have you read Airy or anything on speech act theory? I love speech act theory.
Steve.
Yeah, go ahead.
When we're talking about the sets, I was using the terminology universal set. Should I be saying axiological set?
No. It's a universal set.
Okay.
So if you look at the math for a complementary set, it's real simple. It's just something like A prime equals U, then there's a backward slash A, and what that means is that U is the everything that exists, and in U there's two sets. There's a set A and there's a set not A, and that's by the law of negation. So it's just simple. Ducks exist, right? You agree a duck exists. Yeah. So you have two sets in the universal set. You have one set that contains things that are ducks, and then the other set is everything that isn't a duck. Now, the atheist will argue that the universal set exists. This is a more advanced one than Mark. There's a universal set, and in that set, there's the set of things that exist, and the things that don't exist. And in the set of things that don't exist, right, would be God. And so the way you could argue it is that God is not in the set of things that exist, and so it's in the non-existent set. So you have exist and non-exist, right? That's just a straight dichotomy: exist, not exist. So there's two sets in the universal set: things that do exist and things that don't exist. And again, it gets complicated because you said, well, in the beginning that violates your own premise because you said the universe is things that all things that exist. But in philosophy, it's really all the things that are in the possible world, right? And so not existent things can be argued in some degree to have some type of existence in a possible world, but that's where it gets really complicated.
Yes, I tried law atheist in a non-existent object problem.
Yeah, it's really that gets into the nitty gritty of what we mean by existence. Like, do dreams exist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but when we talk about ontological things, they would say that God is in the things is something that doesn't have any what's called ontological presence.
All right, quick question then on sets, universal set, okay? Because I'm on been on the outside looking in, and I'm diving in. I'm getting a crash course in this, and my brain's starting to hurt a little bit. Anyway, I've heard of this before. I never really put a whole lot of thought because I've had other things to take care of in real life. But anyway, for me, this is me speaking. I'm not speaking for nobody else. Okay, this is for me speaking. For me being a theist, looking at universal sets, they tend to buck the status quo in some theist realms. Okay, this is me speaking. Okay, now with that in mind, in my mind, I'm looking at, okay, if I want to understand sets, instead of looking at it with my knowledge, I should look at it with logic.
Yes.
Because knowledge is fallible, no matter how smart or how much knowledge you have.
No, it's not. See, again, James, knowledge must be true by definition. Knowledge must be true. And this is what happens. There's something in logic called equivocation. And equivocation is an informal fallacy. It's where you use a word two different ways in an argument, right? When we're talking about knowledge, we're not talking about what's called explicit knowledge or tacit knowledge. We're not talking about, like I know how to play guitar, right? Not very well. But I mean, I know what a chord is, right? But that's not what we're talking about. When we're talking about knowledge, we're talking about a very specific type of belief that's true and justify that you believe it. Knowledge, by definition, must be true. You cannot have false knowledge. You can have false belief, but you cannot have a false knowledge. And I wrote an essay called Principle of Attribution and Retraction, and I explained this. It's like, let me think of something that must be true. Knowledge must be true. There's something else that must be true by definition, and I can't forget what it is. But anyways, long story short, there's no such thing as false knowledge. It doesn't exist.
It's why philosophy, all of the sciences, especially the hard sciences, you can't be a good scientist, I would argue, of any stripe without a huge amount of humility, because there are things that we think are knowledge today that we're just flat wrong about, they were knowledge, they never were knowledge, we were wrong, and we called them knowledge.
Right.
And you need to be able to admit that. Otherwise, you can't do science, because we're going to prove ourselves wrong more than we prove ourselves right.
That is exactly true. That's why scientific knowledge is not quite the same as epistemic knowledge, in my opinion, because scientific knowledge is provisional. It changes. I mean, yes, it can be argued as some kind of epistemic knowledge, but the fact is, as you said, you can claim that it's knowledge, but once you find out it's false, you have to what's called retract that claim. It no longer isn't knowledge. It's the fact that you had a false claim to knowledge is what it is.
Okay.
Does it make sense?
Yes, very much so.
So I'm going to give you an essay that I wrote. I like promoting my own stuff. Sorry. I mean, I write this for people so they can understand it. Are you in the live chat, James?
Live chat, yeah.
All right. So that.
Oh, no. I had to turn it off because that's where I was getting the echo earlier. I turned the YouTube off.
Turn it on and mute it.
All right. I will. If you come back to this video tomorrow, I'll have all these things on the video thing. I didn't put in the description. But
okay, I'll look at it.
If you go to the live chat and go to my blog, I wrote an essay called The Principle of Attribution and Retraction. And basically is this. I describe it this way. If I say I believe it's going to rain tomorrow and it doesn't rain, I just had a false belief. My belief was wrong, right? No big deal. But if I say I know it's going to rain tomorrow and it doesn't rain, I never said that I had a false knowledge. What I say was my claim to knowledge was incorrect. So the principle of attribution and retraction is that I attribute knowledge to something that wasn't actual knowledge, and so I had to retract that claim to knowledge. but I don't have a false knowledge. I have a false belief, and because of that false belief, my claim to knowledge is wrong. And again, this gets into some cool epistemological stuff here, right? And again, not a lot of people talk about this stuff. And I talk about very niche stuff. I get it. I have a very specific thing in epistemology I like. But this is something that I think that a lot of atheists don't understand when they talk about the principle, if they don't understand that knowledge can't be false, they're not really understanding sound epistemological principles. And I'm gonna give you one of the things I wrote. Go ahead.
It's also how the impact that it has in the real world around us. People often say, the number of times, well, what's the point in philosophy? What's this? What's that? What's the other? They're so disconnected from the real world. I mean, just as an example, you claim that it's going to rain tomorrow. Now, if that comes from a person who seems to have some authority, like a meteorologist, and they, after they make that claim, find out actually they were wrong, they can no longer say that they know it's going to rain tomorrow. It's definitely not going to rain tomorrow, and they don't fess up to their epistemological error. And some farmer somewhere now is sowing seeds at 11 o'clock at night that require it to rain tomorrow for them to actually produce a valid crop. You all of a sudden have just fucked over that farmer because you claim to know something that you had no justification in knowing, and then your hubris prevented you from admitting the error.
And so that gets into future contingents too, and future what's called truth makers, about what are the truth makers for future contingencies.
So hey James,
absolutely.
I brought the message Steve left on the outside chat into the inside chat.
Can you bring this one in too? Because I don't want to put it on the screen because it messes up the layout. I wrote another I'm sorry, I write a lot of stuff. I do philosophy blog. But I wrote one called Gumbles and God, like you might be interested in as well. This one was actually reviewed by Landon Curtinol again. And it was basically taking Matt Dillahunty's argument and actually explained it to him properly, because Matt Dillahunty I don't think he understands his own argument. And what's so funny is Matt won't refute Matt's a perfect Matt Dillahunty, and I hate to bring Matt into it, but Matt Dillahunty is the perfect example of a new atheist TM. He won't refute my actual arguments. He can't. In fact, he had to incorporate one of them eventually. My argument against the use of agnostic atheism, because knowledge is a subset of belief. Matt took him 8 years or some shit, but Matt finally came around sometime last year and said, yeah, I no longer identify as an agnostic atheist because I find that to be nonsensical in the weak case, because knowledge is a subset of belief. Where the hell do you think he got that from? Hello?
Did he attribute that to you, Steve?
No, but you know what's funny? John? Every time that issue comes up, he mentions my name. Every time the issue comes up, he mentioned my name on Twitter. He mentioned my name on the line, because he'll be like, "Oh yeah, Steve's like, Steve. This is why I blocked Steve McCrae, because he might be right on it, but he's like, it has a bone on it." So I know he knows it came from me. I know he knows my arguments on that, because I know who told him. I know two people that told him.
Well, nobody would ever accuse you of not being tenacious, Steve.
Yeah.
So.
It's so. And by the way, when I say that I know, I could be wrong and that I don't think I am. But if I was, I'd be like, okay, I retract my name to call it. I retract my name claim to knowledge. But I definitely believe this because I have evidence for it.
And if anyone's mad about you promoting your stuff, this show exists to get people to read Steve's blog. So
that's it. That's the whole purpose of this show, right? People are like, oh, you just want the views. I'm like, no, I want my blog promoted because I want people to actually understand the material. I don't get. Yes, there's ads in my. The most I ever made my blog was $20. I average about $1 a month for my blog. Okay, I don't make any money off my blog, but I mean, $1 still a Coke, right? A soda, a Diet Coke.
Steve, I mean, you're a fledgling personality cult, don't you? Right? I mean,
I'm an atheist sex cult leader. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the long wavy hair.
No, not anymore. I cut off my hair. My hair's short. Yeah.
Well, of course you are. Well, your thumbnail still.
Yeah, I know. I haven't updated it. Whatever. I put it on the thumb. The thumb has a newer image of me. I just haven't updated this one because I look good. There.
Well, in truth, my thumbnail's from about 15 years ago as well, so I should probably update that. But...
This was like, I don't know, 3 years ago? I think this avatar was 3 years ago, give or take.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to bounce, guys.
Yeah, I'm going to bounce too. I'm going to end this.
Got to start work.
Yeah.
The Sci-10, what was you mentioned earlier you had a recent conversation with Sci-10?
It was called
it was last week.
It's called 10 Reasons Why Christianity is Wrong, and I meant classical theism. Again, not to get into theism versus classical theism, but there is a distinction I make. So I don't think all theism is wrong, but I have some issues with the standard classical interpretations. And so I came up with 10 very simple. These were not super super deep thoughts. But just general reasons why I think the classical versions of God, the omni God, is false.
Well, you know, the more dogma and an assumption that you pile onto deism, essentially, the more ammunition you're given to demonstrate that holistically that premise is wrong.
Yeah, well, look at the Trinity. Trinity is logically incoherent. I'm sorry, there's just no way around that. I've never been able to wrap my head around any concept of the Trinity. It's all incoherent. Yeah,
no, I've spent some time thinking about that. I just cannot rationalize it in any direction.
No, and what do you think they came up with Mysterianism for? They gave up. They just like, we don't know. We just call it Mysterianism.
Yeah.
That's true. Look it up, guys. They literally gave up. They couldn't make a coherent model from the Council of Nicaea of the Trinity, so they came up. They had modalism, right? Which is, modalism was basically, God is fire. Was it ice, water, and steam? That didn't work. That was a heresy. They had Sabellianism, which was a heresy. They finally said, "Yeah, we give up. We're going to call this Mysterianism." It's just whatever.
Yeah.
All right, but anyways, I gotta wrap this up.
Very peculiar.
I'm gonna put the links in the video description after the video. So, go ahead, John.
Sorry, Steve. What I was saying about Site-End, I'm literally while I'm working today, I'm gonna just stick my headphones in.
Yes, it's on the
Non
Sequitur show.
Was that on the Non Sec show?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, I know where I'm looking now.
Yeah,
cool.
Non Sequitur show.
All right, Steve. Well,
all right,
great
John,
talking to you again.
Pleasure. Please, by the way, I love your stuff on Facebook, so please keep it up because you're like me. You tell people that I read your stuff and I'm like, yeah, he's fucking spot on, and they'll go, you're wrong. Well, okay, show me the evidence. I swear to God, every day I go, show me evidence. I get bumpkiss.
I mean, there's only so long that you can ask for and it doesn't even have to be well formulated. You're not like asking for a B versus MP or like just something that can be rationally assessed.
I get nothing. That's why I'm an asshole to them, because that's just, I'm not dealing with honest interlocutors. These are all, in my opinion, intellectually dishonest interlocutors. So, all right, John, thanks a lot, buddy.
Which is why James.
Yes.
Refreshing conversation with you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
An honest interlocutor that we disagree with.
You.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So hopefully we'll see you around again.
And it's so funny because James, here it is, a younger creationist who people know I am so antithetical towards, and yet I love discussing with somebody who holds those beliefs that is engaging, that wants to learn about the topics. We agree or disagree. It's about the discussion. When you come into a conversation without even any attempt to understand the other person, you're not having an honest dialogue. And that's what happened early with Mark and I. I knew that was going to be the case. And so, James, I would have a million of you on again, other than one Mark, except for entertainment purposes, because I take you seriously. I don't take Mark seriously.
Well, you probably see me on the Non Sequitur lot. You do live streams over there, right?
No, I see. I know your name. That's why I brought you in. I recognize your name. You've been in the live chat before.
Yeah.
On the Non Sequitur. But what I'm going to do is, like I said, I'll put up some stuff on my blog in the next day or two. I'll put the links in the video description. Do I have a contact information for you, James?
I don't believe so.
Will you do me a favor? Go to my about. Has my email. Just send me an email or something. Whatever. I don't know if you want the doctor.
Okay.
Whatever. But send me whatever you can, or on Twitter. Send me something where I can contact you. Because I'd like to bring you back on these types of discussions on this channel.
I'd love it.
And I'm going to be doing a lot of these panel type discussions at night. I get off work late, and so I did them last year. I still want to do them again, just like this. Open panel. It won't be very often, but I do want you a part of that, so you can ask questions. I love that. I find it to be absolutely that.
Yeah, I've learned a lot.
Yeah, get your questions together.
Yeah, I'm an insomniac, though. I'm still up at this time of night or morning, no matter what. So.
Well, I gotta go to bed. I don't have to work till late tomorrow. But it's been a long day and I'm hungry. I haven't eaten. I was so amped up on coffee when I went to work today. I had oh God, I swear to God, my coworker's like, "Are you doing cocaine or something? Are you wasted?" I'm like, "No, it's Maxwell's. I'm telling you."
The reason you don't need to do cocaine is the same reason as to why I didn't need to do pot when I was a kid. And I shall treat you to what my dad said to me: "John, son, you are so fucking laid back already that you're almost dead.
There you go.
What do you need to smoke pot for?"
Right, exactly.
Steve, on the other hand, with the cocaine, probably don't need you any more amps than you already are.
I swear to God, I have never tried cocaine in my life. I've tasted it when I was like 15, just tasted because it was very bitter, but I've never used it. It would kill me. It would probably kill me. That'd be that statistic. The first time I ever tried Coke, it'd kill me. But
I tried it once. I didn't like it. I prefer coffee.
I'm a coffeeholic. Yeah. All right, guys. I'm going to end the hangout here. So John, you already said goodbye. James, you already kind of said. Flame, you anything you want to leave us with?
I'll see you later.
Okay, sounds good. All right, guys, I'm going to end the.
Thanks for your time, guys.
I'm going to leave the call and kind of just wrap it up because if not, we'll be talking forever. Okay, but James, again, seriously, I'm thrilled to death that you dropped by. Okay.
All right, I appreciate you letting me on panel.
Yep, you got it, man. All right,
bye.
Bye. All right, guys, that was a nice turn of events. I gotta admit, I love when somebody comes in like James did, asking questions from a very diametric point of view. I love when people challenge ideas. I love dialectics, and this is what I'm saying. When people think that you disagree with me, I'm going to be upset or this raging monster. Absolutely not. I am the antithesis of that. What I do get upset is when you have dishonest interlocutors coming in to try to tell me that I'm wrong, but cannot substantiate it with reasoned argumentation, reasoned logical arguments, or even citational support. And this is what I was trying to impart to Mark, that he didn't even understand what he didn't understand, and he certainly did not refute anything that of my arguments. He strawmanned, overtalked, did not want to actually listen to what my arguments are. And when you have to violate basic logical premises, such as axiomatic sets, you're probably not going to be at a very strong rational position. So what I think he probably should have done is said, if he would have said, hey, look, I've read your arguments because I'm intellectually honest. Your arguments are correct logically. You make very strong arguments for your cases. I disagree with them, and let me tell you why. It would have probably been a very different directional content of a show. However, I told you guys on the Non Sequitur show community tab that this was going to be a dumpster fire, and I predicted that. So it is what it is. But James was great tonight. So again, I'm going to be having these types of hangouts at night, maybe once every couple of weeks or so. I don't know. I always say that I do, and I do. Tonight was a perfect example. But I like to get more of it on the panel. I mean, I know it's late and I know it's diversified, but I love getting people on panel to have these types of discussions. So if you're interested, let me know. If you got questions, please leave it in the comments section. But like I said, my shtick is this: you come at me sideways, you're probably going to get sideways in return. Just talk like a human being, be an adult. If you think I'm wrong, just show it, just demonstrate. Atheists are always saying, or new atheists are always saying, I accept evidence, and you give them evidence, you give them logic, and they still deny that your logic is correct, even though they don't have the skill set to explain why. And again, this is very basic stuff. My paper is not written on any advanced level. It's undergrad stuff. Everything I do is undergrad. Everything. Why? Because I'm an undergrad. I had 4 years of college, okay? So I do have college. I have 124 semester hours, which is enough for a bachelor's degree. But they're all over the place. Okay, but I did have college education. And so when you look at my arguments, all you need to do is just show why they're wrong. And if you point out a flaw, I'll correct it. When Dr. Demi pointed out, hey, you might want to kind of word it this way just in case, I understood what he was saying, but I'm like, I didn't want to rewrite it. But I'd be like, yeah, that's a good thing in case somebody does later on say, hey, Steve, what about this? I could now be strengthened and have a rebuttal when they bring that up, because I was brought it up by Dr. Demi. It wasn't anything wrong. It's just, if you infer it this way, I'm like, I get it. Absolutely. It has to do with implications. But anyways, this was great, guys. Thank you guys for watching. April, Heat Shield, all my mods, Anis Frida, Perfect. Who else we got? Anyways, Van Veen. Good seeing you guys. Please leave me some comments and share these videos. Again, I ask all the time, if you really want to help me out, just share the information. Share the video, share the blog, get my arguments out there, because that's what I want. I want my arguments out there where people can go, hey, here's Steve's argument. Let's discuss it. And I know they are. I know they sit in Discord for hours on end talking about my arguments. I know this for a fact. But I really want to see it more discussed in the Facebook communities and the Twitter communities. And I want to see what the actual arguments against them are. I really do. All right. So with that, guys, I'm going to bid you guys good night, and we'll see you next time. Good night.